Chapter 320. Langyi was a prosperous place with a good business atmosphere. There were many good things there. Coincidentally, Jiang Pengji had been studying in Langyi for 3 years. The second lady wrote a letter to Jiang Pengji to help with the preparations. It was also to show that the Lu residents valued the concubine's daughter and the marriage. Because Lu Shi was in Chongzhou, he had no time to send the concubine's daughter off. This task naturally fell on Jiang Pengji's shoulders. Of course, even if Lu Shi was free, he would not give the concubine's daughter so much face. Moreover, she was not even his daughter. Takshu sighed. Lang Jun treats the second Nyangzi so well. Jiang Pengji listened and smiled without saying a word. Would she treat a concubine's sister well that she had never met? TSK, a weasel paying a visit to a chicken. What good intentions could there be? It was definitely not a good thing for a concubine's sister to marry Wu Ma Jun. Looking at Takshu's graceful figure leaving, Jiang Pengji frowned slightly. The audience in the streaming room drooled. Lo Siji Lianmeng, it's a pity. If the streamer was a man, such a delicate beauty could be kept in the room. Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan, #pick nose. The streamer is not such a crazy person. Do you think everyone thinks with their lower body? Panda sigh, I also think it's a pity. She's such a beauty and she grew up with the streamer. Instead of marrying out and being defiled by the men of this era, it's better for the streamer to protect her. I think no one is better than the streamer. Faced with the stream of emotions, Jiang Pengji could not help but laugh. What was that saying again? The green bamboo snake's mouth, the wasp's tail in battle. Some blessings could not be enjoyed. As she was thinking, Takshu, who had already left, entered the room again. She bowed and said, Lang Jun, Wei Lang Jun came to the residence to send a visitation card. Zixiao? What is he doing here at this hour? Jiang Pengji's brows furrowed. She secretly thought about Wei Si's purpose for coming to the residence. In the 3 years that she studied in Langyi Academy, she had almost no interaction with Wei Si. He had his own circle of friends. Jiang Pengji would not take the initiative to get close to him. Moreover, he would go out for half a month to visit relatives and friends. They did not meet each other much. More than half a month ago, she vaguely heard the students of Langyi Academy mention that Wei Si had gone out again. Calculating the time, she reckoned that he had just returned. Why would he come to her residence to send a visiting card? With that in mind, she did not let them wait for long and went straight to the reception pavilion to meet Wei Si. Jiang Pengji sat down on the master's seat and said with a smile, what a rare guest. Zixiao actually took the initiative to come to my humble abode. 3 years had passed, and Wei Si was now a young man in his early 20s. Compared to 3 years ago, he looked more handsome. Probably because of the long journey, he seemed to have lost a lot of weight. The green clothes on his body actually seemed a little empty. Upon hearing the teasing, Wei Si covered his mouth with his hand and coughed lightly. The voice was slightly hoarse and nasal. It seemed that this person was not only tired from the long journey, but also not feeling well. Did you catch a cold or something? Why don't you get a doctor to take a look? Wei Si shook his head and slowed down his breathing, suppressing the urge to cough. However, the green color under his eyes added a sickly look to his face. No matter how one looked at it, he did not look fine. He said, I'm fine. It's just that I accidentally caught a cold the day before yesterday and am feeling a little unwell. Jiang Pengji nodded and waited for Wei Si to state the purpose of his visit. Sure enough, Wei Si had his own purpose for visiting. Lanting, I heard that you're going to send off your sister's marriage to Shangjing. After all, they were classmates in the academy. Wei Si did not call Jiang Pengji so distant. Instead, he called her by her courtesy name like others did. This matter, if it can be avoided, try your best to avoid it. Jiang Pengji was puzzled and asked, Zixiao must have his reasons for saying this. I don't know why, but why can't I go? Wei Si said, 3 years ago, the government sent troops to help Nansheng. On the surface, it seemed that they were fighting and repelling the four factions of Nanman together with the other countries. In reality, the four factions of Nanman had no intention of destroying Nanxing. They only took the opportunity to retreat and occupy the conquered counties. They took the opportunity to recuperate and plan for the future. At the same time, this was also an extremely vicious plan to sow discord. Jiang Pengji said, I know about this matter. The four factions of Nanman stopped their attacks not because they were really defeated, but because they gave Nanxing a chance to breathe. At the same time, they disintegrated the reinforcements of the other four countries and provoked a conflict of interest between the other four countries and Nanxing. Although the other four countries sent troops to help Nanxing defend the last of their territory, they did not run a relief society. There was a price to pay for sending troops to help. After Nanxing was defeated, not only did they have to face all kinds of conditions from the four factions of Nanman, but they also had to give benefits to the reinforcements of the other four countries. The other four countries sent troops to help in name, but they also had the intention to take advantage of them. However, in the beginning, Nanman attacked ferociously. They were united against the enemy. Later, Nanman stopped attacking, and the internal reinforcement alliance was in chaos. This matter was known to the whole world, but all the countries pretended to be peaceful and righteous. They did indeed fool many fools. But, what does this matter have to do with me sending off my sister's marriage? Wei Ci choked and lowered his eyelids. His expression was slightly silent. Jiang Pengji was not in a hurry. She waited for him to speak. When the spring plowing is over, Nanman will definitely make a big move. Nanxing is probably going to perish. Next, Dongqing will face the predicament of being attacked from both the north and the south, Wei Ci said. The external threat is so obvious, but there are also many internal problems. The situation in Shangjing is extremely serious. It is almost to the point of being in a state of panic. One by one, they are still living in a drunken stupor, unaware of the changes in the outside world. They are passionate about internal strife. The four princes have grown up and each has their own backing. The fight for the throne is interspersed with the increasingly serious struggle between different factions. If you go to Shangjing, I am worried that you will not be able to return. When he was anxious, he did not even address himself as Ci anymore. He directly addressed himself as I. Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows. I will not be able to return. Don't underestimate those relatives and eunuchs. When they go crazy, they are not afraid of anyone. Jiang Pengji was calm and played with the teacup in her hand. I will consider what you said carefully. However, regarding the matter of sending off my sister's marriage, even if it is a dangerous place, I have to go. Wealth comes from danger. I don't know that those relatives and eunuchs are colluding with each other to create trouble. But don't worry, these useless fellows will not be able to touch a single hair of mine. Wei Ci pursed his lips. His expression became complicated. Jiang Pengji suddenly said, I am not that weak. I know. Then you can relax and wait for a good show. In the eyes of others, Shangjing may be a dangerous place, but for her, it was definitely the beginning of her journey to the 9 states and 4 seas. Chapter 321. Brother Ci, father is having tea in the front hall. Wei Ci came out of Jiang Pengji's house and went to visit his master's house after a short rest. Although Master Yuanjing was famous in Zhozhou and was the most famous scholar in the world, he lived a simple life. His house was neither too big nor too small, and the scenery in the house was very casual. The scenery in the yard was arranged bit by him, and it had a natural wildness to it. He just raised his hand to knock on the door, and the door opened by itself. A slightly immature and energetic face peeked out from the door. The person who opened the door was his master's youngest daughter, who was also his most beloved daughter, Zhu Qingming. Wei Ci smiled, folded his sleeves, and said, Is this master's foresight again? Qingming directly destroyed Master Yuanjing's pretense and said playfully, No, it's obvious that Sanwu in the yard suddenly ran around happily, and father couldn't do anything about it. He then knew that Brother Ci was here. It's not as powerful as you said. Sanwo was a kitten that Master Yuanjing picked up by accident. She had a difficult birth, and Wei Ci happened to be a guest in the house, so she was asked by Qingning to help. In the end, she successfully gave birth to 4 pure black kittens. It was probably because of this that Sanwo was very close to Wei Ci. Because of this, Wei Ci was often teased by a few classmates who were on good terms with him. Of course, there were also malicious mockery. Those people maliciously mocked him, saying that if he did not achieve anything in the future, he could become a midwife. Wei Ci only smiled at those malicious words and did not take it to heart. Thinking of his master drinking tea in the hall and being harassed by Sanwo in all kinds of ways, he could not help but smile. Qingning saw his expression and could not help but blush. She was a step behind and followed him with small steps. She gently bit her lower lip and asked shyly, "Brother Ci, did you just come back from visiting friends?" "Yes," Wei Ci said, "Master's birthday is at the beginning of March. I have to come back early no matter what." Qingning replied with an, "Oh," and said with her head down, then, "Brother Ci, do you remember what the 16th of February is?" 16th of February? Wei Ci was stunned. "I know that the 15th of February is the flower festival. What is the 16th? Qingning revealed a disappointed expression and tried her best to conceal the unhappiness on her face. Fortunately, she had already arrived at the front hall, so she bowed her head and hurriedly excused herself. Wei Ci did not understand. Were the thoughts of this child so difficult to understand nowadays? Master Yuanjing frowned when he saw his daughter's attitude, but he did not make it clear. "Master." Wei Ci greeted. "Don't stand on ceremony." Master Yuanjing held on to Sanwu, who was struggling and scratching him. He tidied up his messy sleeves and looked a little embarrassed. Wei Ci held back his laughter and said, "Master, if you can't carry Sanwu, then let your disciple do it and carry Sanwu on your behalf." Just as he finished speaking, Master Yuanjing let go of him. The 3 of them rushed into Wei Ci's embrace and found a comfortable spot to lie down. Master Yuanjing secretly twitched his mouth. Another one was seduced by a young man. Even an old man was despised by him. "I saw you chatting happily with Wunyang just now. What did you talk about?" Qingning was the 5th child in the family, so many elders called her Wunyang. Wei Ci did not understand and said bluntly, "Wunyang asked me if I remember what day is February 16th. Master Yuanjing sighed and said, "February 16th is Wunyang's birthday." Wei Ci was stunned on the spot. His hand that was rubbing Sanwu's neck stopped. He could not help but have an absurd thought. From Wei Ci's point of view, it was indeed frighteningly absurd. He still pretended not to understand and said with a smile, "So, she wants to ask me for a birthday gift." Master Yuanjing's face was fierce as he exposed Wei Ci's disguise. "After February 16th, Wunyang will be 13. She should be at the age to talk about marriage." At this point, it would be too much for Wei Ci to continue pretending not to understand. He could only smile bitterly. "I watched Wunyang grow up, and I'm 7 or 8 years older than her. I only see her as a younger sister. Why would I have these thoughts? I know that you live the life of an ascetic monk and don't care about these worldly matters, but Wunyang is still young." Master Yuanjing paused and lowered his voice to ask Wei Ci, "I'm happy to see this happen, but it depends on your wishes." After all, Wei Ci was a student that he liked. Master Yuanjing could be said to have watched Wei Ci grow up and knew his temperament. It would be best if he could recruit him as a son-in-law. He also loved Wunyang, who was an old woman. As an old father, he naturally hoped that she would live a good life. Wei Ci was shocked. Sanwu, who was in his arms, noticed the change in his emotions. She used her paw to pat Wei Ci and meowed a few times. "I don't mean that." Wei Ci shook his head and said, "Moreover, I don't want to harm her." In fact, Wei Ci almost got married when he was 15 years old. It was just that when the two families exchanged cards, the bride was so scared that she broke off the engagement. Not only did he break off the engagement, his reputation was almost completely ruined. Those who were still willing to be friends with him were all true friends. Wei Ci treasured them very much. No matter which family it was, if they saw Wei Ci's horoscope, who would dare to marry him? Master Yuanjing secretly rolled his eyes. Wei Ci's excuses could fool the ignorant people, but it was not enough to fool him. Those who believed in the horoscope would naturally be restrained, but those who did not believe in it would naturally be unaffected. Master Yuanjing sighed, "Fine, I won't be an annoying person who will break up a loving couple." Wei Ci's expression froze. He seemed to have thought of something and wanted to avoid it. Little girls are the most fickle. They like certain things very quickly. Once there is a substitute, they will change their feelings very quickly, Master Yuanjing said faintly. It's almost the flower festival. When the time comes, ask your mistress to find someone who is as good-looking as you for Wunyang. I reckon that this matter will be over. Wei Ci was slightly embarrassed. Was it his fault for being good-looking? He should look for his parents for this matter. However, Master Yuanjing had made his attitude clear, which made Wei Ci slightly relieved. He had lied just now. He did not treat Qingning as a sister. He simply treated her as a daughter or granddaughter. Considering the issue of seniority, he changed his words. Wei Ci and Master Yuanjing talked for a while before Mistress called him over. She said that she had something to tell him. Master Yuanjing watched Wei Ci leave with Sanwu in his arms. He was silent for a while. His gaze turned to the screen at the side of the hall. Did you hear that? Qingning pouted. Her eyes were filled with tears. They were bloodshot, and there were tear stains on her face. You shouldn't have such thoughts. Cut them off early. I will find you a real good husband. Be good. There are many good men in the world. Although not all of them are as good as me, there are many who are more filial than Zixiao. Master Yuanjing loved his youngest daughter, but he was not without principles. Only Wei Ci was a little troublesome. I don't believe that Brother Ci's horoscope will harm his wife, children, parents, teachers, and friends. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of your father either. But there is someone in his heart. You can't squeeze in. Why bother? When Qingning heard that, she suddenly started crying again. Chapter 322. All right. Wunyang, don't cry. When it comes to marriage, it's all about fate. There's no need to force it. Master Yuanjing patted Qingning and allowed the old woman to wipe her tears on his clothes. Qingning was a stubborn girl. When she found out that Wei Ci did not like her because he had someone else in his heart, she felt indignant. Elder brother Ci is already 21 years old now. The youngest people of his age are already married, and the earlier children can already read and write. Who on earth has seduced his heart? Qingning pursed her lips, and her eyes were filled with tears, as if she was about to cry in the next second. The young girl was very innocent. She had never thought of forcing Wei Ci to like her. She just felt that the person she liked was good in every aspect. Others should like him like her. Although it would be uncomfortable, it would be best if the person she liked was happy. If there was someone else in Wei Ci's heart, why was he not married? Master Yuanjing was slightly troubled by this question. It depends on fate. When fate is right, it will happen naturally. Could it be that the person is younger than me? Qingning twisted her handkerchief and pouted. Older than you. Master Yuanjing said, don't cry. Wipe your tears. If outsiders see you like this, it will look bad. Older than her? Qingning suddenly felt even sadder. If he was older than her, did it mean that he was about to reach marriageable age? Was Wei Ci waiting for him to reach marriageable age? Who is that person? Qingning asked. I want to see. She was not jealous. Instead, she was more competitive and curious. As the youngest daughter of Wei Si's teacher, was her relationship with Wei Si not considered close? She had such an advantage, but he still did not like her. Instead, he liked someone else. The young girl felt uncomfortable. I'm afraid that if you see him, you will feel even more uncomfortable. Master Yuanjing sighed. When the time is right, you will naturally know who that person is. I will find you someone of similar age, looks, and talent. He will let our Wunyang live happily. Qingning nodded with tears in her eyes. She was a little emotional. It's almost time for the flower festival. When the time comes, you must tell your father if you see any handsome man. Although the atmosphere in Dongqing was getting stricter and stricter with the restrictions on women, Master Yuanjing's thoughts were not on the same level as those of the secular world. Even though it was a blind marriage, Master Yuanjing could not bear to see his daughter suffer. Choosing a son-in-law was like choosing a pair of shoes. The daughter would know if the shoes fit. If she liked them and the father was satisfied, then it would be a good marriage. Qingning was still a little sad, but she was a young girl after all. She was easily shy when it came to matters related to her marriage. Biting her lip, she responded in a low voice. Wei Si had his dinner at Master Yuanjing's residence before he left. It was just that Sanwo was rather resentful of him for being away from home for so long, and only after tearing his sleeves did it loosen its claws reluctantly. Wei Si's mistress carried Sanwo in her arms and stroked its fur. She sent Wei Si to the door and covered her sleeves with a chuckle as she looked at his miserable appearance. The flower festival is coming soon. Go back and prepare some brighter clothes. If you were to wear this, which lady would take a fancy to you? Mistress looked at Wei Si lovingly. Although she was old, she had a good attitude and still looked young. Wei Si's cheeks turned red. He was so teased that he was speechless. When an elder teased a junior, should he not be shy and accept it? Should he explode on the spot? After leaving Master Yuanjing's residence, Wei Si's mind was filled with the words, flower festival, as if he was possessed. After a while, he felt that something was not right. Could it be that I forgot something? Wei Si was puzzled. He carefully thought about the flower festival. 12th of February. The birthday of 100 flowers. Birthday? Wait. The flower festival was not her birthday? Wei Si seemed to recall something, and his expression changed slightly. The flower festival was the day when 100 flowers were born. It was also a good day for young men and women of the right age to go out for an outing. The girls in the boudoir also let go of their usual modesty and began to worry about what color of clothes they should wear on that day and what popular makeup they should put on. Although the young men were not so fussy, they were faintly anxious and tried to show their best side on that day. Jiang Pengji was a little bored on this day that was filled with a strange atmosphere. She was pulled up from the bed by Takshu. She rinsed her mouth and washed her face in a daze. Then, a bowl of clear broth noodles was placed in front of her. It's longevity noodles again. Jiang Pengji looked at the thin noodles in the bowl, which were of the same thickness and as thin as hair. She suddenly became energetic. Takshu sighed and said, I can understand that you don't want to hold a big birthday celebration. After all, many things are inconvenient when you are away from home. But you still have to eat this longevity noodles. Finish it in one breath and can't stop. It means longevity. That's what Madam specially told me. Jiang Pengji did not need to taste it to know that there was no seasoning in the bowl of noodles. It was boiled in water, which was bland and unpalatable. If you don't eat it, the noodles will burn, Takshu urged. Jiang Pengji closed her eyes and picked up the bowl. She picked up the noodles and stuffed the longevity noodles into her mouth. She even finished the soup. That's right. Lang Jun will definitely live a long, long life. Takshu smiled and put away the bowl and chopsticks. Only Jiang Pengji had a bitter face. It's too bland. The taste was simply indescribable. She could get used to Yuan Jing's unique dark afternoon tea, but she still could not accept such longevity noodles. After eating the noodles, Jiang Pengji took a shower and changed into the new clothes that Takshu prepared. The color of the new clothes was fresh and tender. From afar, it made people's eyes light up. Takshu was quite gratified, but then she sighed. It's such a good day today. Why are you sighing? Takshu helped her tidy up her clothes and hung all kinds of accessories, such as sachets and pendants. You're already 15 years old. If master didn't insist that you dress up as a man, you should have reached the marriageable age by now. You should look for a suitable husband and dress yourself up beautifully. With your appearance, which noble lady can compare with you? Why do you have to dress up as a man all the time? She seemed to realize that she had said something wrong. She quickly knelt down and begged for forgiveness. Jiang Pengji's expression did not change. She said, I quite like it this way. She bent down and helped Takshu up. We're like a family. You don't have to be so distant. Jiang Pengji was 1.7 meters tall. She was half a head taller than Takshu, and she was not inferior to men of the same age. Although her appearance was slightly feminine, she actually looked more like a man than most men in this era where men wore flowery hairpins and powdered their hair. Speaking of reaching the marriageable age, Sister Takshu is not young anymore. If you have someone you like, Lanting will definitely settle it for you. Xuanmei was in love with Su Ku. She was willing to wait for him and drag it on, but Takshu could not drag it on any longer at her age. Takshu was stunned. She immediately lowered her head and wanted to change the topic. Lanting really treats you as family. If you have any difficulties, just tell me, Jiang Pengji said with a smile. Jiang Pengji said with a smile. Takshu burst out laughing. Your servant's life is better than that of a rich merchant's wife. What difficulties do I have? She took the sandalwood fan and passed it to Jiang Pengji. Come back early. You still have to leave tomorrow. Don't be blinded by the foxes outside. Otherwise, I won't let you go. Okay. Chapter 323. The flower festival was the birthday of 100 flowers. Young girls in their prime wore bright clothes and had flowers painted between their eyebrows. They walked gracefully, surrounded by maids, and worshipped the flower god. In the words of the audience in the streaming room, it was a day full of dog abuse. Spring is coming, and everything is full of life. What a good day for young men and women to tell each other their hearts, and single dogs continue to cry. Jiang Pengji sat on a tree branch. There was a gathering in the distance. The young, beautiful, and energetic girls were indescribably beautiful under the spring sun. Not only did they attract Jiang Pengji's attention, but they also attracted the gazes of a group of young nobles. White was chewing the weeds that had sprouted on the ground. He spat it out after chewing, then went on to harm another patch of tender grass. She smiled and lifted her foot to touch White's mane with the tip of her toe. It walked away in disgust. Jiang Pengji smiled and talked to White, You're not young anymore. Do you want me to find you a partner? How many cubs do you want? White squinted and made a sound as if it was mocking her. She did not understand horse language, but the little angel in the streaming room seemed to have learned the language and helped her translate. Yekaken, White's voice, My stupid master, how many days have you not washed your feet? Wadidi and dudii, wrong. White is obviously a single dog, and you want to mock me? Wicked people. Renzhong Qi too, this young lady is very popular. I just noticed a strange horse trying to flirt with Dabai. Jiang Pengji secretly rolled her eyes. Was she not as attractive as the horse, Whitey? She leaned on the tree branch and closed her eyes to rest. Because of the terrain, the air in Langyou was warm and humid. The pear blossoms that only bloomed in March were now all over the branches. When the spring breeze blew, petals would rustle and fall. She leaned against the tree trunk and propped her legs up. One hand was on her knee, and the other was holding the wooden clogs that she took off. Her feet were only wearing snow-white socks. Half of her body was hidden in the pear blossoms. If one did not look carefully, one would not notice that there was a person lying on the tree. A cool breeze blew, and the pear blossoms rustled and fell. Jiang Pengji could vaguely hear a conversation in a low voice. "Wunyang, did you really take things too hard and reveal your thoughts to your father?" The girl's voice was sweet, but it was so sweet that it made people feel sick. "Dad is an open-minded person. If I tell him, he will help me decide." The voice of the girl called Wunyang was a little hesitant and dejected. "But brother Ci already has someone else in his heart, and father doesn't agree either. He asked me to take advantage of the flower festival to find someone else I like." The girl with the sweet voice pouted in dissatisfaction. "How can you do this? Then do you know who that person likes?" Wunyang looked slightly worried. "I don't know. I asked my father, but he refused to tell me. He only said that he would naturally know when the time is right." The girl tilted her head, thought for a while, and said with certainty, "Then he's definitely not a decent person." Wunyang did not understand. She asked doubtfully, "Why do you say that he's not a decent person?" "You don't understand. Wei Langjun is now 21 years old. If he really has someone he likes, he definitely won't delay it like this. Unless the girl's identity is not good, for example, he doesn't have the face to marry someone from that kind of place. Don't you know that all the matchmakers in Langya County don't dare to matchmake for him? He's already in trouble. If he continues to delay it, what about the issue of heirs?" After listening to her, Wunyang only understood what she meant after a long while. She suddenly blushed, and she felt a little angry. Brother Ci is not that kind of pedantic person. Even if he really likes a woman from a brothel, he won't be so concerned about his reputation. How could Wei Ci continue to let the person he liked suffer for the sake of his reputation? Wunyang could not accept someone slandering Wei Ci like that. Then he likes married women. The girl spoke before Wunyang, stopping her from speaking. "All the matchmakers in Langya County can't wait to cover their noses and avoid Wei Ci. No one matchmakes for him, and his marriage is not settled. Now that a beauty like you has taken a fancy to him, he should respond happily. Why would he use the excuse that he has a sweetheart to reject you?" Wunyang was a little angry. "I won't allow you to say that about him. How can a gentleman covet someone else's wife and concubine?" The girl pouted and said shrewdly, "You're so protective of him, but he doesn't even look at you properly. You're in a hurry to get close to him, but has he ever given you any face? What's so good about Wei Ci? He's a jinx who brings misfortune to his wife and children, his parents, and his entire clan. Foolish opinion." Wunyang was so angry that her chest rose and fell violently. There was a little anger on her little face. "What about brother Ci? Look at his behavior. He respects his teachers, is friendly to his schoolmates, and treats the younger generation leniently. How can you judge him based on the 8 characters of fortune? There are many people in the world like the 8 characters of fortune of the emperor. Why is he the emperor, while others are just common people?" "Humph, yes. I'm ignorant. I'm not as knowledgeable as you, 5th Miss Shu." The girl was also angered. It was as if her sore spot had been hit. She retorted, "You're so educated, reasonable, and considerate. You're actually sticking to a man who no one wants. That's great. You." Wunyang widened her eyes at her words. She was so angry that her fingers were trembling. No matter how bad Zixiao is, he's not someone who can be belittled by a daughter born of a commoner's wife who lives in poverty and is arranged by her official mother to be someone else's concubine. Jiang Pengji found that the 2 girls were arguing louder and louder, which seriously disturbed her sleep. She could not help but jump down from the pear tree and interrupt them. The 2 girls looked over upon hearing the sound and saw a young man in fresh clothes with a smile on his face. He was only wearing socks, and his wooden clogs were still in his hands. The girl was startled by her appearance. Thinking of what she said just now, her face turned pale. Wunyang was still a little puzzled. She asked doubtfully, concubine? You'd better be more careful in the future. It's better to stay away from such a talkative and venomous beauty who likes to judge people's hearts with sinister words. Jiang Pengji took 2 steps forward and saw through the girl's nature at a glance. She sized her up with a faint smile. She belittles Zixiao not because she really looks down on him, but because she wants to plan for herself. Huh? Wunyang was stunned. Her official mother wants her to marry a man who is old enough to be her father. She's unwilling and wants to find a better way out for herself. Zixiao is despised by others, but she doesn't have a high status and is not valued at home. How compatible are they? That's probably what she thinks. Jiang Pengji stared at the girl until her face turned pale. Her legs trembled, and her words poked at the secrets in her heart. If I hear any rumors that tarnish Zixiao's and this girl's reputation later, Jiang Pengji's expression suddenly turned cold. Guess who will spread the rumors? Wunyang was an innocent girl in the boudoir, but she had an open-minded father. She was also knowledgeable, but she did not stick to the inner courtyard. Chapter 324. You have to be careful when making friends. At least this kind of friend isn't worth making. Jiang Pengji pointed at the girl and said, if you know what's good for you, leave. I don't like to make things difficult for a 15 or 16-year-old girl. It makes it seem like I'm a bad person. The girl bit her lower lip and tried hard to resist the urge to tremble. She turned around and ran away with her face covered. Wunyang was confused from the beginning to the end. Little girl, you should be more cautious. Not everyone is worth befriending, and not every topic can be confided in. Jiang Pengji glanced at Wunyang's attire and frowned. Are you Zhu Wunyang from Master Yuanjing's family? She had long heard that Master Yuanjing had a precious old daughter, but Jiang Pengji had never seen her. How did you know? I've seen the hairpin on your head at Master's place. You're also called Wunyang. I think you must be Master's precious daughter. Wunyang subconsciously raised her hand and stroked the hairpin that was inserted into her hair bun. Her pale face was a little flushed. Are you my father's student? Jiang Pengji nodded and conveniently put down the wooden clogs in her hands. She wore them on her feet with a calm expression. But I've never seen you. There are so many students in Langyi Academy, and not all of them are personally taught by Master. It's normal that you haven't seen him before. It was called an academy, but it was very different from the school that Jiang Pengji knew. Rather than calling it an academy, it was more like a library for part-time teaching. Most of the students came with questions to discuss with others. If they could not find any answers, they would look for Master Yuanjing to solve their doubts. Most of the time, they would be studying on their own or having fun. They would only be present when Master Yuanjing was teaching. Of course, the younger students had their own teachers in charge of teaching them how to read and write. Jiang Pengji didn't belong to the group of initiators, so naturally, she wouldn't stay in the academy for long. It was normal that they hadn't met before. Oh, Wunyang replied and lowered her head. When he thought about how his conversation with the young girl had been overheard by this person, he felt extremely uncomfortable. Can I ask a question? Jiang Pengji furrowed her brows. Why is Zixiao being vilified by others? Based on the conversation between the two girls, she could more or less guess what was going on, but there were still some things she didn't understand. It was too ignorant and arbitrary to judge that Wei Ci was not good just based on his horoscope. Wunyang looked hesitant. She initially thought that Jiang Pengji deliberately pretended not to know to get information from her, but upon taking a closer look, she realized that Jiang Pengji really did not know. Actually, you can't blame Brother Ci for this. Wunyang pursed her lips, feeling sorry for Wei Ci. Because Brother Ci was born at the wrong time, and he lost his mother when he was born, he was almost strangled to death when he was born. In the end, he was lucky enough to survive, but he was not well received. Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows. That's it? How could they be despised by the entire Langyi County just because of this? Although the girl who ran away was talkative and had some evil intentions, Jiang Pengji felt that she was not lying about Wei Si's situation in Langyi. This. Wunyang stammered. She had no choice but to say, when brother Ci was 15 years old, his father's second wife tried to arrange a marriage for him. The two families were about to match their 8 characters, but as soon as the 8 characters were taken out, the woman resolutely broke off the engagement and spread the 8 characters. Jiang Pengji was still confused. What kind of strange horoscope could cause such great power? That horoscope is famous for cursing wives, children, parents, and even the whole clan. Therefore, it is feared by people. Seeing that Jiang Pengji did not understand, Wunyang had to bite the bullet and continue. Brother Ci was born on the 22nd day of the 8th lunar month in the year of Kueo, 22 and day of the 8th lunar month in the year of Kueo? Jiang Pengji faintly felt that this day was a little familiar. She could not help but think deeply. She seemed to have seen it somewhere before. This time of birth. Jiang Pengji suddenly thought of the content of a piece of unofficial history and said, "Is this really his birth date and 8 characters?" Yes. Jiang Pengji suddenly understood why Wei Ci was so feared and ostracized by people. If he was born in the year of Kueo, Wei Ci was separated from that historical figure by exactly 3 60-year years, which was 180 years. Having been in ancient times for so many years, Jiang Pengji was quite familiar with some taboos in this era. 60 years was a cycle, and Wei Ci's date of birth coincided with that of a famous historical figure. Moreover, he was born without a mother, which seemed to confirm his fate of cursing his mother. This made people uneasy. Could it be that he was the reincarnation of that famous person? Which famous figure? The founding prime minister of the Xia dynasty, Huangfu Fengmin, was born in Langyi County. He was also a famous romantic figure in the past. The ancestors of the 3 tribes of the northern borderline, the Qiangu tribe, led 500,000 cavalrymen in rattan armor and swept through half of the central plains. In the end, they were stopped by this person at the Sichuan plain. With a big fire, the sky darkened and the earth darkened. 500,000 wronged souls were buried in this plain. Not a single one survived. According to some old people, on special days, the Sichuan plain would be filled with white dust, like the ashes of those cavalrymen. This was probably not considered ruthless. What was more ruthless was that this person had once made tens of thousands of captives into human flesh and dried meat for the army to use. He had resisted the most tragic battle before the founding of the Xia dynasty. He seemed to have done many things like burning cities and massacring them. It was not wrong for the enemy to hate him because he was ruthless to the enemy, but why did the descendants of the Xia dynasty also avoid and hate him so much? According to rumors, this person held the young emperor hostage and tried to replace him. In the end, he was killed by the young emperor who bore the humiliation and carried out his mission. The young emperor probably hated this person to the core, so he cut off his head and separated his corpse. He took out his heart and made it into food to be cooked and shared with many officials. When she read this part of history, Jiang Pengji was completely dumbfounded. That was not the end of it. There was another unofficial historical rumor that said that the young emperor and his confidants had conspired to summon the most accomplished Taoist priest in the country to make a soul-suppressing peachwood coffin. His headless body was placed inside the coffin, and his soul was imprisoned. They used the monstrous hatred in his heart to suppress the Xia dynasty. The unofficial history also said that before the Xia dynasty was destroyed, there was thunder and lightning and a flood. This caused the mountains to collapse, revealing the peach coffin. The peach coffin was split open by a farmer who went up the mountain to chop firewood. He released the wronged souls and ended the fate of the Xia dynasty. Wei Ci was born after the Xia dynasty was destroyed. People could not help but suspect that this person was the reincarnation of that person who came to take revenge. Unfortunately, Wei Ci's appearance became more and more handsome after he grew up. He was full of talent. Whether it was the 6 arts of a gentleman or other unorthodox skills, he displayed impressive talent. When the annulment of the engagement happened, this date of his birth spread throughout Langyi County. Naturally, people were anxious. It was not to the extent of taking Wei Si's life, but his life would not be easy. I didn't know that Zixiao had such a legendary past life. Jiang Pengji teased him with a smile. Wunyang was so anxious that her eyes turned red. Brother Ci can't be the reincarnation of Prime Minister Huangfu. It's also impossible for him to do such a despicable thing. Jiang Pengji tilted her head. Prime Minister Huangfu assisted Emperor Xia and helped him go from a lowly ruffian to a hegemon who unified the 9 states. What kind of person was he? If that person was the reincarnation of that person, Wei Ci should be happy. In today's world, there might be a lack of such a person. Huh? Wunyang was confused. This was not the main point. But, it seemed that there was nothing wrong with thinking that way. Jiang Pengji called the system in her heart. No, what kind of dimension is this? There's actually such an anti-science thing as reincarnation? The system rolled its eyes. He's not the reincarnation of that person. Everything is purely a coincidence. Jiang Pengji was speechless. Coincidence? Would Wei Ci cry if he heard that? Chapter 325. This is the first time I've heard it from an outsider. Many of my father's students think that Brother Ci was born with bad luck. They see him as an ominous person and wish they could cover their noses with their sleeves, as if he was the plague. Although no one said anything on the surface, they have been distancing themselves from him behind his back. Wunyang was very dissatisfied with the injustice that Wei Ci had suffered. She also firmly believed in her own opinion of Wei Ci, but she was small and not many people would listen to what she said. Now that she met someone who shared the same ideals as her, she could not be happier. It's just the opinion of the ignorant. Jiang Pengji pouted and said, countless children were born on the same day and at the same time. Do they all have the same fate? Are the children born on the 22nd day of the 8th lunar month in the year of Kueyo the reincarnation of Prime Minister Huangfu? It's just that his performance was too outstanding, so he was envied by others. Those people can't compare to him, so they can only use this stain to slander him. That's right. Those people don't understand Brother Ci at all. They echo what others say and don't have their own brains. They follow the crowd all day long. Wunyang was in high spirits. She clenched her fists and nodded, looking extremely happy. Seeing that, Jiang Pengji could not help but laugh. The audience in the streaming room also expressed that the little girl was very cute. She felt completely different from the coquettish bitches outside. Lo Siji Lianmeng, ha ha ha, this little girl likes beauty Wei Ci, right? Nugwan in, the little girl is still young. How would she know whether she likes him or not? I feel that she is more like a girl chasing after a celebrity. Beauty Wei Ci is her idol, so she does not allow outsiders to maliciously slander her idol. She swears to defend his reputation. Remote control you dropped, please. In ancient times, there were many girls who got married at the age of 12 or 13. How is he young? Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan, TSK, girls who get married at the age of 12 or 13 are mostly from poor families. Slightly wealthier families will definitely keep their daughters for a few more years, at least until they reach the age of 15 before getting married. Master Yuanjing's daughter, how can her family be poor? Jiang Pengji also agreed with the audience in the streaming room. Wunyang did have romantic feelings for Wei Ci. Why are you looking at me like that? She looked like a lecher. Wunyang felt slightly uncomfortable under Jiang Pengji's gaze. She could not help but take a step back. There was an unnatural look on her face. Jiang Pengji burst into laughter and exposed him. You like Zixiao? Wunyang blushed and immediately gave up. You stayed on the tree for so long just now. You heard everything that you shouldn't have heard. You asked the obvious. I just like Brother Ci. Father said that he's a good family. If he's my husband, he definitely won't suffer. Wunyang liked Wei Ci and even wanted to marry him. It was definitely not because of his looks. She was not that superficial. Many of her female friends were engaged, but what about their husbands' families? Thanks to her identity as Master Yuanjing's daughter, she would occasionally go to the academy to deliver food to her father and would always hear some gossip. Men were not married yet, so there were plenty of times when they had conflicts with the maidservants by their side. They even had a concubine's child to embarrass his wife. It was not impossible for him to spoil his concubine to the detriment of his wife. Because of Master Yuanjing's open-mindedness, Wunyang naturally had to choose someone that suited her. Not only did she have to love her, but she also had to understand and take pity on her. When Sanwa's son had a difficult birth, the servants wanted to throw him away so that he wouldn't bring bad luck if he died in the house. She had no choice but to ask Wei Ci for help. When he heard it, he did not regard the lives of Sanwu and his son as worthless. Instead, he rolled up his sleeves and did not dislike the blood. He did not annoy Sanwu and made her scratch him when she was in pain. He actually delivered Sanwu's child with a serious expression. Anyway, after this incident, Wunyang really liked Wei Ci. Suitable room and suitable home? The corner of Jiang Pengji's mouth twitched. It was the first time she had heard such an evaluation. The audience in the streaming room almost exploded. The screen was full of 666. Liang Wang Situ, my language teacher, died early. Can you explain to me what is suitable room and suitable home? Yinuajia Zhuga Qinma, the heavenly peach, the dazzling beauty, the return of the sun, suitable room and suitable home. Understand it yourself. She felt like she had read a fake book of songs. Jiang Pengji held back her laughter and said, if you like it, just tell him directly. According to Zixiao's character, regardless of whether he accepts it or not, he won't spread the news and ruin your reputation. Wunyang said dejectedly, but Brother Ci has someone else in his heart. He's a serious person. I don't want to compete with others. So? Jiang Pengji asked. So, I hope he can be with his sweetheart as soon as possible. He's already 21 years old this year. If it drags on, it'll be really difficult for him. Wunyang pouted. She felt a little sad and said awkwardly, anyway, I'm only 13 this year. There will definitely be other good candidates for my husband. That's true. Jiang Pengji liked Wunyang's open-minded character very much. Master Yuanjing was very good at raising his daughter. The audience in the streaming room also expressed that they were attracted to Wunyang. Didn't you see how many girls in the house adhered to the principle of, the person I like must like me and reciprocate my feelings? Otherwise, he would be a heartless man. How many grudges and grievances had evolved from such unreasonable reasons? It was precisely because of Wunyang's open-mindedness and cuteness that she was particularly special. Hey, after talking so much, I still don't know which student of my father's are you? Jiang Pengji smiled gently and said, my name is Lu Shi. If you don't mind, you can call me Lanting. Wunyang widened her eyes in surprise. After a long time, she said slightly angrily, sure enough, rumors can't be completely trusted. What rumors? Others say that Lu Shi is just a playboy who deviates from the orthodox path and attends meetings in his spare time. He's another example of a tiger father and a dog son. Wunyang tilted her head and secretly sized up Jiang Pengji. However, she was caught by Jiang Pengji's gaze. She could not help but blush and said shyly, I don't dare to say anything else, but at least you see things more clearly than those people. If all playboys were like you, they wouldn't be playboys anymore. Jiang Pengji was just about to laugh when she caught a glimpse of a bullet screen. She almost froze. Dashu Xiaobing, streamer, it's very dangerous. This girl wants to flirt with you. Young lady, you have a good eye for talent. She naturally praised Wunyang and herself. Wunyang was stunned for a moment. She immediately understood that the person was shamelessly praising herself. She immediately burst into laughter. Jiang Pengji urged, it's getting late. Let's go back quickly. We still have to worship the goddess of flowers. Okay. Wunyang nodded. She found a direction with fewer people and trotted away. Jiang Pengji stood on the spot with her arms crossed. After a while, she walked straight to the back of a pear tree. Aren't you moved at all when a young lady said that she likes you to your face? Behind the tree, Wei Ci felt that his heart was about to stop beating. He was so scared that he dodged backward. The back of his head hit the trunk of the tree. It seems that you really have someone in your heart. That's why you have the heart to reject the young lady's kind intentions. Wei Ci's expression was unprecedentedly serious. He pursed his thin lips tightly and looked at Jiang Pengji sharply. Chapter 326. He lowered his voice to warn her. I'm not someone who doesn't know what's important. Otherwise, I would have called you out when you got close to me. Jiang Pengji was not afraid at all. Instead, she glared at him. Wei Ci came at the right time, neither too early nor too late. Jiang Pengji originally wanted to fulfill his wish, so she did not expose his identity. Now that she saw it, the young girl was open-minded and could let it go. The man did not have any intention either. Her efforts as a matchmaker were in vain. Wei Ci lowered his eyelids after Jiang Pengji said that. He hid the strange look in his eyes. You're too boring. You have a lot of thoughts. Jiang Pengji clicked her tongue. She rested her hands on the back of her head. Her wide sleeves slid down her arms, revealing two fair, slender arms. Her wrists were slender and beautiful. Wei Ci averted his gaze awkwardly, not daring to continue looking at her. Jiang Pengji did not miss his reaction. She smiled and deliberately got closer to him. She whispered, "Fortunately, I'm a sensible person. Fortunately, I'm a sensible person. If I were a little slow-witted, I might think that you're a homosexual." Wei Ci's face darkened. What do you mean? How can a normal man blush when he looks at another man's arm? He even pretends to avert his gaze. Others won't suspect anything wrong with the latter. They'll only think that the former has unusual feelings for the latter. That's why. Men in this era would not say anything even if they were shirtless, not to mention showing their arms. Wei Ci's face darkened even more after hearing that. He secretly clenched his fists in his sleeves. Jiang Pengji saw that he did not leave but stayed where he was. She could not help but be curious. It looks like you came here specially to look for me. She said confidently, if it were any other day, you would have flung your sleeves and left if I provoked you like this. Why would you still be standing there like a log? Tell me, why are you looking for me? Wei Ci was speechless. The pear blossom petals fell with the breeze. There was no one around, and no one saw their abnormality. The audience in the streaming room watched the whole scene. They felt sorry for Wei Ci, the unlucky child. Up until now, the men that Jiang Pengji had met were either bullied by her like a little white rabbit once, after which she lost interest in them, or they were in cahoots with her. Both of them were not good people. Only Wei Ci was bullied by Jiang Pengji whenever she saw him. They did not know Wei Ci's current state of mind, but they really felt sorry for him. Lo Siji Lianmeng, host, can you find someone else to fight? Host V, I'm not willing to. Everyone, Wei Ci's expression changed again and again. In the end, he suppressed the surging emotions in his heart. I heard people say that the flower festival is your birthday. But you didn't hold a birthday party, and you didn't invite any friends, so I can't be sure. He had once thought that the flower festival was her birthday. Every year on this day, all the officials would celebrate, and the whole world would celebrate, but he still hadn't forgotten the scene of her destroying all the gifts by herself. All the maids were chased out by her, and no one dared to approach her. Wei Ci did not know why she was like this and did not dare to ask. He still had a lingering fear in his heart. He didn't know why, but he suddenly had the courage to ask about it. The flower festival is indeed Lu Shi's birthday. Jiang Pengji smiled and squinted her eyes. Her answer might seem problematic to outsiders, but it was harmless. After all, wasn't she Lu Shi? When Wei Ci heard this, he faintly felt that this was the case. Are you here to give me a gift? Jiang Pengji had been in Langyi all these years, and her birthday had always been spent with longevity noodles. She had never had such a flashy but impractical occasion. At most, she would have a richer meal on that day and wear brand new clothes. Yes. Wei Ci responded softly. Jiang Pengji suddenly felt a little guilty. He came to give her a birthday gift, but she rebuked him with her words, which made her feel suffocated. Thinking of this, she felt that it was not easy for Wei Ci. What is it? Jiang Pengji asked directly. Wei Ci did not feel offended. After all, this person's reaction was already considered giving him face. It's my humble work. It's barely acceptable, Wei Ci said. He took out a very delicate pendant. Beauty sleep? Jiang Pengji took it. A few beauty sleep flowers were in full bloom, and their petals were stretched. They were made of bloodstone, and the veins were handled very well. From afar, it looked like a beauty sleep that had just fallen from the branches. She could not help but raise her eyebrows slightly. Zixiao's skills have improved greatly. The stone was not of the highest quality, and it was made by Wei Ci himself. Although it was not valuable, it was the thought that counts. Over the years in Langyi Academy, Jiang Pengji had been invited to other people's birthday parties. Most of the gifts she gave were the students' own works. Manuscripts, carvings, paintings, and calligraphy. Friendship was more important than value. Wei Ci's gift of this pendant could only be said to be average. But Jiang Pengji secretly glanced at the bullet screen. Sure enough, there was a bunch of people ridiculing Wei Ci. Bingtang lemon, invisible pretense is the deadliest. What do you mean by clumsy work, barely acceptable? Mui, I've been learning carving for a few years, but I can only hug myself and cry. Jiang Pengji felt better. Host V, it's okay, I'll help you. In an instant, the bullet screen that ridiculed Wei Ci turned into heartache. He was rebuked before he gave the gift, and now he was rebuked after he gave the gift. How pitiful. Thank you. In another place, Wunyang was in a good mood. She worshipped the flower god and prayed for her family as usual. In the end, she shyly added, "May I have a lover and stay together till death." The flower festival was indeed very lively. The beautiful young girls in fresh clothes competed with each other for beauty, and the young men who were dressed in elegant robes became a unique scene. Listening to the rhythmic recitation of the elegant gathering, Wunyang was thinking about her marriage. She did not have to think about Wei Ci. They were not fated to be together, and she could not force it. There were many young talents at the flower festival, but compared to Wei Ci, all of them were overshadowed. Back home, Wunyang was still worried about this matter. Master Yuanjing looked at her pouting face and could not help but smile. He asked her, "Did you fancy anyone today?" "No, I can't compare to Brother Ci at all," Wunyang said. Yuanjing's wife saw that her husband was so inappropriate, and she suddenly became a little angry. "How can you teach your daughter like this? I'm really afraid that when Wunyang reaches the age of 15, no one will dare to propose marriage. How can you let Wunyang make the decision herself?" Master Yuanjing said, "Why are you so worried? If no one proposes, then so be it. Can't an old man like me support Wunyang?" His wife was also angry. "You know that you're old. How many years can you protect Wunyang? You don't plan well for her, and you only cause trouble." Master Yuanjing was erudite and eloquent, but he did not dare to talk back to his wife. He secretly glanced at his daughter and saw that Wunyang was smiling at him. She was watching the drama unfold. There are so many young talents. Is it true that none of them fancy anyone? Master Yuanjing stretched his neck to make sure that his wife was far away. Then, he turned to ask his daughter. "There are people, but I don't know if they have a marriage." "Oh. Who?" "Lu Shi. He's about the same age as me." He's quite humorous. He's not as bad as the rumors say. Master Yuanjing was speechless. Chapter 327. Who are you talking about? Master Yuanjing would rather admit that his ears were not working and that he had auditory hallucinations than to hear that name from his daughter's mouth again. Wunyang did not understand. She smiled and repeated, Lu Shi. Isn't he your student, father? He was accepted into Langyi Academy, so he must have no problem with the major issues. As for his character, I think I need to observe him further. She can't do it. Master Yuanjing denied. His firm attitude puzzled Wunyang. When she said that she liked Wei Ci, her father did not show any objection. Instead, he was happy to see it happen. It was a pity that he already had a girl he liked. Wunyang disdained to compete with others, so she chose to give up sadly. Now that it was Lu Shi, why did her father reject her so decisively? Is Lu Shi already married? Wunyang thought about Jiang Pengji's appearance and age. She felt that it was highly possible that he was engaged. The current trend was for men to marry early. It was rare for a man like Wei Ci to be single at the age of 1 in his 20s. If that was the case, Wunyang could not force him. No. It's just that, your temperaments are not suitable. Master Yuanjing was usually eloquent, but he was speechless now. He did not know how to explain it to his daughter. Lu Shi is not a fish in the pond. He is wild. I think you will be wronged. Wunyang was a filial daughter. She only had a good impression of Jiang Pengji. Since her father was not satisfied, she did not want him. Master Yuanjing let out a long sigh and stroked his daughter's long hair. On one hand, he felt that his daughter was like him. She had a good eye for people. Both Wei Ci and Lu Shi were outstanding. It was a pity that the former's heart belonged to someone else and he had a special destiny. The latter's gender was not suitable. He wanted to have a grandson and granddaughter. On the other hand, he felt that it was a pity. Master Yuanjing smiled kindly and promised. I will find you the best husband in the world. Wunyang was so shy that her cheeks turned red. After all, she was an unmarried little girl. She would definitely be shy when talking about her marriage. If I can't find the best, I won't get married in the future. I'll let you raise me for the rest of my life. Wunyang hugged Master Yuanjing's arm and acted like a spoiled child. She said, when I grow old at home, you can't dislike me, father. Master Yuanjing heaved a sigh of relief. It would be great if the matter could be resolved just like that. Although he could predict the fate of others, he could not predict the fate of those close to him. He didn't know where his daughter would end up in the future. The only thing he could do was to keep an eye on her and find her a real son-in-law. Jiang Pengji had bid farewell to her close friends a few days ago. She had also informed Master Yuanjing. With the fragrance of pear blossoms filling her sleeves, Jiang Pengji stepped into the orange afterglow as she returned home. There were many cars parked in front of the door. They were filled with the rare wood and furniture that Jiang Pengji had found from all over the place, clothes, jewelry, cosmetics, and land deeds, not to mention the dowry prepared in Hejian. Jiang Pengji's dowry alone had already exceeded the value of a daughter of a concubine from an aristocratic family. Many of the items that were bought had been handled by Takshu. She knew the value of these dowries the best, so she felt a little indignant. What are you thinking about again? Your lips are curled up so high that you could hang a pot of vinegar on it. Jiang Pengji washed up and changed into her pajamas. She let down the long hair that she had combed during the day and tucked it behind her head. When she returned to the bedroom, Takshu knelt down and tidied the mattress on the bed. She looked a little resentful, and her tidying movements were big. This was very different from her usual self. Her reaction was a little strong, so Jiang Pengji asked casually. Takshu tidied up the mattress swiftly. She glanced at where the booklet was placed and became even angrier. Your servant has tidied up the booklet for the dowry. I brought it here for you to have a look. Jiang Pengji bowed to Takshu and smiled apologetically. I wonder what Lanting did today to make you so angry. Takshu saw that she was fooling around and threw the corner of the blanket on the bed. She said unhappily, Langjun is so open-minded, but your servant is narrow-minded. Even the daughter of a concubine from an aristocratic family doesn't have such a generous dowry, let alone a daughter of a concubine who doesn't have a deep relationship with you. If it were in someone else's family, they would have emptied the storeroom. What will you do in the future? In today's era, the daughter of a concubine and the daughter of a concubine were two completely different concepts. The Lu residents gave such a generous dowry to the daughter of a concubine. It seemed like they were going to empty the storeroom. How would the son of the first wife who would inherit the family business in the future feel? Of course, from another perspective, it also reflected the generosity and benevolence of the Lu residents. They treated the daughter of a concubine so well. However, this kind of good wasn't something that everyone would buy. If it were an ordinary person, they would not be happy with what Takshu said, even if they did not have any thoughts. Jiang Pengji smiled indifferently. When my sister gets married, the dowry and her family are what she relies on in her husband's family. Not to mention marrying into the royal family. She cannot be looked down upon. I'm her brother, after all. Why should I be calculative with her? Takshu sighed. Langjun is magnanimous, but I'm afraid she might not appreciate it. Although they had the same father, the daughter of a concubine and the daughter of a concubine were opposite in status. They rarely got along well. Jiang Pengji smiled without saying anything. Takshu did not continue the topic. She lifted the blanket and was about to lie down. She said, "We're leaving tomorrow. Have a good night's sleep. You don't have to keep watch tonight." Takshu agreed with a smile. She still made the bed in the outer room. Jiang Pengji could only sigh when she heard the movement outside. That night, the moon was bright and the stars were sparse. Master Yuanjing did not sleep until midnight. He tossed and turned, which woke his wife up. "What's wrong with you tonight?" He tossed and turned like he was baking pancakes. "Did I wake you up because I moved too much?" Master Yuanjing looked at his wife, who stood up with a cloak draped over her shoulders. He said apologetically, "Go back to sleep. I'll stay in the study for the night. I'm restless tonight. I can't sleep, you think too much." His wife went back to sleep and mumbled vaguely. Master Yuanjing lifted the blanket carefully, put on the cloak, and left the bedroom quietly. The moon was bright outside. He glanced at it, lowered his head, and calculated. He frowned secretly. He did not feel sleepy until dawn. Instead, he sat in the study for the whole night. There was another person who had insomnia like him. The sky had just turned bright when the city gate opened. A group of carriages quietly drove out of the city gate. Jiang Pengji rode white and walked in front of the group. Behind her were more than 20 carriages filled with all kinds of dowry items. More than 100 guards guarded on both sides of the carriages. They held on to the broadswords at their waists tightly. They were wary of the movements on both sides of the road. They were afraid that they would encounter bandits or mobs. Wei Ci stood in the Shirley pavilion with a cloak draped over his shoulders. He looked at Jiang Pengji's back as she left and sighed. Chapter 328. Langyi County was not far from Hejin County. Even though they met bandits along the way, they were killed by Jiang Pengji and her men before they could even get close to the carriages. Apart from these small disturbances, the rest of the journey was peaceful. It was even safer when they reached Hejin County. During the years that Jiang Pengji studied in Langyi County, the bandits near Hejin County did not have a good time. Those people were either caught and killed, or they were secretly recruited by Jiang Pengji's troops. Because of that, Hejin County had been peaceful for many years. "Lang Jun, let's go home." Takshu stuck her head out of the curtain and saw the city on the ground. Her heart was filled with joy. Jiang Pengji held the reins and replied softly, "Yes, let's go home." Hejin County was the first place she stayed after waking up in this world. Even though she did not have a sense of belonging, she felt that things were still the same, but people had changed when they met again after so many years. Let's go. After lamenting, the fleet of carriages was repaired. Jiang Pengji waved her whip and continued on the road. Because someone had informed them in advance, the Lus had already sent someone to wait outside the city. Jiang Pengji had excellent eyesight, so she naturally saw who was waiting at the front. Her lips curled into a sincere smile. She asked White to run a few steps and said to Su Ku, "Xiao Yu." Su Ku bowed to Jiang Pengji with a smile on his face. "Welcome, Lang Jun." Su Ku, who was already in his 20s, was a little longer than before. His shoulders were a lot broader, and his face was more determined. The immaturity of a teenager had faded away, and he now had the calmness of a young man. Perhaps it was because he was in high spirits when he was in a good mood. Su Ku followed Jiang Pengji to study in Langyi early in the morning. Even though he was her study companion, he was no different from a normal student in Langyi. Sometimes, he could even receive personal lessons from Master Yuanjing. 2 months ago, Jiang Pengji sent Su Ku back to Hejian to prepare for the marriage of the daughter of a mistress in the Lus. Judging by his appearance, it should have been done. Let's not talk about this. We've been on the road for so long and haven't eaten anything good. I'm starving. Jiang Pengji threw White's reins to the servant. Su Ku said, "Madam Hu has prepared a banquet at home. She's waiting for you." "Madam Hu? What about mother?" Jiang Pengji asked. Su Ku replied, "First Madam has been busy with the wedding these days. She caught a cold this morning, so she asked Madam Hu to come out and welcome you." "I see." Jiang Pengji pointed at the fleet of carriages behind her and said, "Send someone to transport all these back to the manor, and then count them according to the list. If there are any problems, you must inform me immediately. I'm so tired, I'm going back to the mansion to change my clothes." The pace of life in the ancient times was quite slow. Even though he hadn't been back for a few years, Hejian County was no different from what he remembered. When she saw that there were many beggars in ragged clothes in the city, she couldn't help but frown. Su Ku took the initiative to explain, 2 years ago and last year, the harvests in the counties around Hejian County were not good. Especially during the autumn harvest last year, there was a small locust plague. There was almost no harvest in the fields. If the commandery governor hadn't opened the granary and borrowed some food from the families, there would have been more victims. Hejian County is fine, but the situation in the other counties is even worse. Even though Jiang Pengji had helped Hejian County solve the problem of bandits and avoided man-made disasters, natural disasters could still make the people suffer. Jiang Pengji's expression darkened. She couldn't help but turn her head to look at the fleet of carriages behind her. The dowry was almost all bought by Jiang Pengji. She knew clearly how much money she had spent. It was only the dowry of the daughter of a concubine in the Lu Manor, but there were countless people around who still didn't have enough to eat. Such a sharp contrast made Jiang Pengji's heart tighten, and her expression became more and more unpleasant. "What about the tenant farmers outside?" Jiang Pengji asked about the farms owned by the Lu Manor. The first madam took out her own money and made the decision to exempt the tenant farmers from their commission. She also helped to pay for the grain tax and gave some money to each household. The other tenant farmers were homeless and had no food to eat, but the tenant farmers of the Lu Manor were not affected much. At least they didn't become refugees. They talked and soon arrived at the Lu Manor. The gatekeeper saw Jiang Pengji and didn't react for a long time. He then hurriedly shouted, "Second Lang Jun is back." Not long after, the old housekeeper trotted out. He couldn't help but burst into tears when he saw Jiang Pengji, who was already 15 years old. "Housekeeper, it's good to be home. Why are you crying?" "Stop crying. I'll go see my mother first." The housekeeper wiped his tears and said, "The first madam just took her medicine and is already asleep. Why don't you go wash up first?" "That's fine." Jiang Pengji went back to her yard. The servant girls had already prepared hot soup and clean clothes. The servants were still the same. The inside and outside of the yard were clean, as if the owner had never left. Xuanmei. You are. Jiang Pengji saw a slender figure. It was very familiar. She was stunned for a moment before she remembered who it was. I heard from Xiao Xiaoyu that you are back today, and I made the decision to clean up your room. Xuanmei's face was blushing. Even without makeup, she still had a stunning beauty. She looked softer and more mature than before. Please forgive me, Lang Jun. Hearing that, Jiang Pengji turned to look at Su Ku. She clicked her tongue and said, so the good news is coming. Su Ku felt a little uncomfortable, so Sun Mei helped him out. I wanted to tell you about this when Lang Jun was free. There's no need to avoid this. He has been delaying you for so many years without giving you a response. Now that he finally relents, of course, we have to get it done quickly. Jiang Pengji teased her. Xuanmei blushed. She folded her sleeves and left the room for the two of them. Seeing that Xuanmei left, Jiang Pengji asked, have you decided? Su Ku knew what she was referring to. He nodded and said, yes. Then don't let her down. Xuanmei is a good girl. To be honest, Jiang Pengji didn't have high hopes for Xuanmei and Su Ku. The latter was a swan. Sooner or later, he would spread his wings and soar. Compared to him, Xuanmei was just an ordinary girl. It was hard to imagine if Su Ku would treat Xuanmei the same way when he became successful in the future. In Jiang Pengji's opinion, with Xuanmei's qualifications, she would be happier if she chose a stable and ordinary man. However, that was just her guess. What would happen in the future would depend on the two of them. Su Ku could hear the warning in Jiang Pengji's words. He couldn't help but say solemnly, I won't let her down. Jiang Pengji patted his shoulder. Remember what you said. Su Ku said, of course I will. Have a seat. I want to know about the changes in Hejin County these years. What's the situation with the troops now? Jiang Pengji stayed in Langyi County. She would receive news every once in a while, but because of the inconvenience of communication, the information was simplified and not detailed at all. Now that she finally came back, she naturally wanted to know more about it. Speaking of business, Su Ku sat up straight and started to organize his thoughts. Chapter 329. Jiang Pengji had not been in Hejin County for the past few years, but she had Qiguan Rang's help and Meng Hun's internal management. The chief of Hejin County secretly opened the door for convenience. The number of people had grown to more than 5,000. This was the result of Meng Hun's strict selection and careful selection. If he ignored the logistic situation and absorbed people to expand the troops, there would be at least 50,000 people. The bandits in the vicinity of Hejin County were basically wiped out. Under the leadership of Meng Hun, the troops swept the bandits in several nearby counties. With the seized goods, the grain that the upper division cultivated and the resources left by Jiang Pengji, the expenditure and income barely reached a balance. The increasing number of troops meant that they were a bigger target. If the chief of Hejin County became wary and suspicious, life would be difficult in the future. Jiang Pengji ordered Meng Hun to transfer most of the troops away. All of them were dispersed and disguised as refugees to Chongzhou. Now, there are only 2,000 troops left in Hejin County. 1,303 are adults, and the other 607 are widowed women or girls. As for the female troops, I think it's better for Lang Jun to consider it carefully. Su Ku knew the purpose of Jiang Pengji's female troops. It was to make full use of every manpower and avoid wasting society's resources. However, in the current environment, the existence of the female troops was really awkward. Some men with dirty minds could not help but speculate that the female troops were actually used to satisfy their desires. Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows. Why? Su Ku said, gossip is a fearful thing. The audience in the streaming room could only watch anxiously. Ngigai Chongfan, damn, don't be moved by Su Ku. Who said that girls are not as good as boys? Is it right that the social atmosphere is like this? Does it make the streamer comfortable to watch women in ancient times have such a low social status? Brainbow, streamer, look at me, look at me, look at me. What do you mean by gossip is a fearful thing? Isn't it just the social atmosphere? Could it be that the environment was correct? In ancient China, men had multiple wives and concubines. Now that society is more developed, bigamy is a crime. Tudo Shigai Chong Fan, but thinking about it, what Su Ku said makes sense. We have to think for the streamer. If she really implemented the female troops, it would be fine on a small scale, but if it was on a large scale, there would be a lot of pressure from the public. Zwizhen Beishijing, I despise the comment above. So what if there is pressure from public opinion? There are so many viewers in the live broadcast room who are always scolding the host, saying that she is cruel or uncultured, cursing her ancestors, but have you ever seen her pay attention to those people who are spewing shit? Seeing this, many people came to a realization. The crux of the problem was not the pressure of public opinion, but whether Jiang Pengji was willing to bear the pressure. Shanhai Ilong, host, don't panic. We will always support you. Idao 88,000, TSK. The entire live broadcast room is filled with the aura of feminist cancer. You guys might as well advocate polygamy. Ancient society was like this. The social environment determined that women stayed at home and raised children. Men were the main productive force of society. Can you calm down a little and consider the environment of the host's dimension? Were they all sick? Due to the difference in opinion, the entire live broadcast room began their daily bickering. Of course, most of the people arguing were the new audience members. Many of the old audience members were still calm and did not worry that Jiang Pengji would be persuaded by Su Ku. Lo Siji Lianmeng, by the way, do any of you remember the name and the real theme of the host's live streaming room? Huagua History de Quan, in the name of palace intrigue, it is actually a fight for the throne and the throne. In Yuejia Zhuge Qinma, #mockery. So, what else is there to discuss about the formation of the female troops? The host, Jiang Pengji, is a woman. In the future, when she competes for the throne and becomes famous in the 9 prefectures, the status of women in society will definitely rise and they will be valued in a real sense. Jiang Pengji wants the competition to be smooth, so it is necessary to improve the status of women in society. Both of them were bound together to a certain extent. Only when the environment recognized the social value created by women could the title of the female emperor be well deserved. Otherwise, even if the person sitting on the throne was a woman and the whole society was still male-dominated, she would only be a puppet. Seeing these comments, Jiang Pengji secretly laughed. The live broadcast room was a mix of good and bad people. Most of them were just onlookers, but after careful selection, there were still some clear-headed people. Note, but, don't you think that when men and women fight, women are at a disadvantage? After all, breasts. In a place like the battlefield, there was no need for manners. To deal with female soldiers, there must be some indecent methods. Hongchen Lingxi, #PickNose1. Look at what the person above said, as if the thing between a man's crotch is made of copper and iron. It doesn't hurt if you kick it. Everyone, I have decided on this matter. The female troops are determined to win. Jiang Pengji raised her hand to stop Su Ku from speaking. She said, right now, our foundation is still too shallow. What's more, joining the troops will give them a place to settle down. Su Ku thought about it and it seemed to be true. Currently, most of the 670 female troops were orphans or girls abandoned by their families. If the troops were not willing to accept them, they would either starve to death by the roadside or be abducted by human traffickers. If they were abducted and sold, they would have a different ending. The unluckier ones would go directly to a shady place to sell their bodies. Those who were slightly better off would most likely be bought by some family and become a child bride or a rough maid. They would be recorded as slaves for the rest of their lives. When Jiang Pengji limited the purchase of rice, it alleviated the food shortage in Hejian County and indirectly reduced the number of refugees. However, the natural disasters and food shortage in the next few years still produced a large number of homeless refugees. Under the premise that the whole family fled, the probability of girls being abandoned or sold was greatly increased. This was the origin of the current female troops. Why? Due to filial piety, the people could not abandon their parents. In order to continue the family line, boys could not be abandoned. Therefore, for the survival of the family, when there was no other choice, the wife and daughter could only reluctantly abandon. When there was a conflict between the two, the wife's value was naturally greater than the daughter's, so the girl was abandoned. Suke's heart suddenly softened when he thought of these details. He could only sigh. Lang Jun is kind. Invisibly, Jiang Pengji's image in Suke's heart rose a few notches. In order to protect the weak, she did not care about her reputation and was willing to bear the public's criticism and criticism. Was such an image not great? In fact, Jiang Pengji was not that great. Whether it was women or men, in her eyes, there was only one synonym: social production resources. Whoever wasted resources would find trouble with her. Chapter 330. Suke calmed himself down and moved the arrogant Jiang Pengji aside. He continued to report the situation. According to Lang Juan's instructions, the female troops were handed over to Maiden Jiang. So when I returned to Hejin County, I first went to find her to understand the situation. The Maiden Jiang that Suke mentioned was Jiang Nongqin. Suke kept his distance from Jiang Nongqin. She was a woman that no one could provoke. He came to Hejian from Langyi a few months ago. He wanted to find Jiang Nongqin to understand the situation of the troops. She was training the female troops. Her sparring partner was a tall and strong young man. He watched helplessly as she pinned him down and beat him up. It was really a beating. The young man was very big. The muscles on his arms were bulging. He looked very intimidating. However, his reaction was not as fast as Jiang Nongqin. He did not manage to grab the corner of her clothes. Instead, she grabbed his hair and pinned him to the ground. She pressed the sleeve knife against his neck. From the beginning to the end, it was rough and clean. It was too scary. This kind of woman, Nongqin, is very hard-working. Jiang Pengji had not seen Jiang Nongqin for a few years, but it did not mean that she had forgotten her. She would occasionally send her training lists, illustrated training plans, fighting tips, and some insights. Nongqin trained diligently every day. She would read and learn to read when she was free. Recently, she could even write letters to her and ask some simple questions. Jiang Pengji had always admired people who were willing to work hard to change the situation. Suke nodded in agreement. He had seen Jiang Nongqin's initial appearance. That was why he was surprised to see her change a few years later. Under Nongqin's management, the female troops had a vague scale. However, the average age of the adopted girls was too young. They could only carry out very basic training and help with some trivial matters. Those who were old enough and too weak would cry with just a little training. Nongqin could not be bothered to be gentle with such people. Jiang Pengji smiled. How did she deal with it? Suke's expression was strange. He said, Maiden Jiang told the female troops that they could either fight and kill here or go to the brothel to serve the men. Some people did not believe it. Jiang Nongqin mentioned it. She killed the chicken to warn the monkey. She directly sent someone to pick them up and told them where to sell them. After this, no one dared to cause trouble anymore. These girls were born in poor families and were not spoiled girls. After a few days, they saw that Nongqin was not soft-hearted at all. Naturally, they did not dare to say anything. They trained and learned to read together. Gradually, they realized that Nongqin was not trying to harm them, so they gradually became loyal to her. As for the older women, Nongqin arranged for them to wash, sew, and cook. At this time, there was a question in the live stream room. De Zhuangzhu Furen, streamer, I think you can also teach them emergency treatment. The death rate on the ancient battlefield was very high. Most people did not die on the spot, but they did not receive emergency treatment and proper care after the battle. Lo Siji Lianmeng, that's true. If the female troops want to gain the recognition of the outside world, they must take out a real hammer to shut those people up. At the very least, the host's subordinates must first acknowledge the meaning of their existence. If they could not only fight, but also treat wounds and treat soldiers, they would definitely be able to stop a lot of rumors. No matter what the outside world says, the internal power of the host must be harmonious. Jiang Pengji did not ignore these suggestions. Her fingers gently tapped on the table in front of her. Since she asked Nongqin to adopt those orphans and form a female troop, she naturally had a series of measures and plans in mind. The suggestions of the audience in the live stream room were very feasible. But Jiang Pengji frowned. Although she had learned first aid, most of those methods were not suitable for ancient times. Streamer V, do you have books on battlefield first aid? Tang roasted chestnuts, yes, yes, yes. My sister majored in nursing. I will find her books for you later. Wei Xiai Nyang Nyang Jiawa, go away, don't fight with me. I majored in nursing and have 5 years of experience in the emergency department. Note, nonsense, I am the head nurse of the emergency department. Who dares to fight with me? In the past few years, Jiang Pengji spent most of her energy on learning, but she did not relax her suppression and testing of the system. After her efforts and the gradual defeat of the system, the level of the live stream room was upgraded to level 4, and the upper limit of viewers increased to 150,000. 150,000 viewers. Even if they were all onlookers, there was no lack of talents from all walks of life. Jiang Pengji asked for some nursing knowledge. Naturally, the number of viewers who responded was like a school of carps crossing the river. She listened attentively to Su Ku's summary report and sorted out the general information in her mind. Is there any news from Chongzhou? Jiang Pengji muttered to herself for a while and asked about news from Chongzhou. Back then, she urged Lu Shi to become the magistrate of Chongzhou because she had her eyes on that place. Because the 3 tribes of the northern borderline were eyeing it covetously, Dongqing had transferred a batch of soldiers away to support Nansheng. Lu Shi had a legitimate reason to recruit troops and buy horses. He called it protecting the border. Even if the emperor of Dongqing and the northern borderline were in love, he could not reject his reason. Master sent news a few days ago that everything is fine. Yes, father is in Chongzhou, so I am not very worried. Jiang Pengji knew how rich the second branch of the Lu family was. They could build at least an army of 20,000 in Chongzhou. Coupled with her meticulously trained troops, it was not too shabby. Su Ku looked down. He could vaguely guess Jiang Pengji's intentions. According to Ku's understanding, now that all the princes have come of age, the situation of the fight for the throne is getting more and more serious. The relatives and the eunuchs have temporarily joined hands, stirring up the entire imperial court. Prince Changshou is full of ambition. I'm afraid he will make a big move next. Why don't you? Jiang Pengji shook her head. We can't. If we do that, it will benefit the north borderline that has been coveting it for a long time. She understood what Su Ku meant. He wanted to take advantage of the chaos in the court and Dongqing's people's misery to gain the upper hand and gather troops to occupy a piece of land. Of course, the bird that sticks out gets shot first. Naturally, she had to wait for the other forces to be unable to hold back and attract the firepower first. Then, she would attack from behind. If that was the case, it would be equivalent to internal strife in Dongqing, allowing the north borderline to reap the benefits. Su Ku asked, does Lang Jun want to deal with Beijiang first? Let them fight for the hinterland of Dongqing first. Jiang Pengji curled her lips and said, defending against the foreign clans is a righteous cause. A fight between brothers and relatives and an outsider coming over to snatch something definitely had a different meaning. The 3 tribes of the northern borderline were outsiders. Beijiang seems difficult to deal with, but are the local forces of Dongqing really that easy to deal with? The relationship between the princes, the emperor, and the feudal vassals is at daggers drawn. including the forces supported by other aristocratic families, there will be a chaotic battle within Dongqing. Rather than fighting with them, it's better to wait for them to finish snatching and then deal with them. Before that, we should first take down the 3 tribes of the northern borderline and occupy their horse farms. But this Beijiang. Dongqing has been fighting with them for many years, but we still can't do anything to them. Su Ku had also considered this point, but single-handedly challenging the north borderline was equivalent to dealing with a country. How could Chongzhou, a single prefecture, achieve this? Chapter 331. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. The factor that determined the outcome of a war was not only the military strength of the two parties, but also the battle of information between the two parties. Why were strategists so highly regarded in ancient times? That was the key. Those who were good at strategizing could accurately predict the enemy's mind, grasp the initiative, and determine victory from 1,000 miles away, even with scant information. In Jiang Pengji's opinion, these people not only had abnormally intelligent brains, but their analysis and deduction of the surrounding situation were also impressive. Others had only just seen the beginning, but their brains had already deduced the ending. That was the difference between ordinary people and strategists. But what if there was detailed, accurate, and real-time information? Even ordinary people could see some clues, and strategists were like tigers that had grown wings. Therefore, if Jiang Pengji wanted to use Chongzhou as a foundation and then plot to conquer the northern borderline, she had to understand all aspects of the northern borderline in detail. I will personally write a letter to my father and ask him to send people to collect information about the northern borderline in advance. Jiang Pengji said, the royal family of the northern borderline and Dongqing have been united by marriage for almost 3 years. It's long past the honeymoon period. Next, it's time to reveal the true intentions. The princess of the northern borderline, Enchanting, married into the royal family of Dongqing. She did not have any good intentions. Jiang Pengji was a witness to how she fooled around with the fourth prince, Wu Majun, under the rockery before marriage. If she sincerely wanted to unite by marriage and ease the relationship between the two countries, would she have cheated on her future brother-in-law? She married the second prince and became his princess consort. She had stirred up a lot of trouble over the years. It was a pity that the residence of the Count of Jinbei became the biggest cannon fodder. Princess Enchanting was indeed the pearl of the 3 tribes of the northern borderline. She was quite intelligent. After becoming the daughter-in-law of the royal family, she quickly grasped the position of the second prince, whose mother's family did not have a high status. She coaxed him into submission and turned him into her mouthpiece in the Dongqing court. When Nanxing borrowed troops from Dongqing to repel the enemy, the second prince followed Princess Enchanting's plan and recommended the residence of the Count of Jinbei. Their reasons were also very legitimate and even irrefutable. The descendants of the Count of Jinbei were good at war, and the old duke was a general who had never lost a battle. If they sent the elite troops of the Count of Jinbei to help Nanxing repel the enemy, not only could it show Dongqing's sincerity towards Nanxing, but it could also promote the might of Dongqing in front of other countries. There was nothing wrong with recommending the residence of the Count of Jinbei. The problem was that the person who prepared the supplies was the second prince, and the military supervisor was a eunuch who had a deep grudge against the Count of Jinbei. The soldiers were fighting at the front lines, but the rations at the rear could not be supplied. The reinforcements who were supposed to cooperate with the operation were always late, the injured soldiers did not receive the care they deserved, and there was often a shortage of rations and horses. The elites of the residents of Northern Marquis were tormented by such a sinister little trick, causing them to be extremely exhausted. In the last battle, the military intelligence was delayed, and 7 or 8 out of 10 elites were lost. The Count of Jinbei, who had suffered a great loss, was not only reprimanded, but also demoted and stripped of the commander's seal. Without the elite troops to rely on, and the commander's seal that even the officials were afraid of was taken away, the current residence of the Count of Jinbei was already at the edge of a cliff, in imminent danger. Although it would fall at any time, it would be smashed to pieces. If it weren't for the fact that the officials were afraid of their reputation, the residence of Count Jinbei would have completely disappeared from Dongqing. From this point of view, it seemed that Princess Enchanting had done nothing, but Jiang Pengji did not underestimate her. The princess's contribution to the current situation in Dongqing's court was indispensable. Su Ke furrowed his brows, leaving a few shallow wrinkles. The real intention is revealed? Jiang Pengji smiled coldly. Isn't it? Most of the elites of the Count of Zhenbei have died in the battlefield of Nanxing, which is equivalent to cutting off 30 to 40% of Dongqing's military strength. The remaining military strength is concentrated in the hands of the officials, the Meng family of Zhangzhou, and Prince Changshu. The three of them are not of one mind. Lang Jun is right. Lao Ai has misunderstood. Su Ke sighed and raised his hand to rub his forehead. He followed Jiang Pengji's train of thought and analyzed. There are many internal conflicts in Dongqing. If there is a scuffle, the three tribes of the northern borderline can reap the benefits. At the same time, there is the threat from the south. Back then, the four countries rushed to Nanxing's aid. The four factions of Nanman took the opportunity to negotiate for peace and won 2 to 3 years of recuperation. Now that they have recovered, Nanxing ceded land to seek peace and lost a large piece of land. They have yet to catch their breath. How can they withstand the strong invasion of the four factions of Nanman? The four factions of Nanman had enough recuperation. Now that they had a strong army and strong horses, Nanxing was still struggling at death's door. The destruction of the country was close at hand. If Nanxing fell, Dongqing would definitely face a pincer attack from the three tribes of the northern borderline and the four factions of Nanman. There were many external threats and endless internal troubles. With such a situation, anyone could imagine that Dongqing would be the next Nanxing. It was a dead end with almost no solution, but Jiang Pengji wanted to find a way out of it. This is our chance, Xiaoyu, Jiang Pengji said calmly. Success or failure depends on this. Who said that the three tribes of the northern borderline would reap the benefits in the end? To open up the situation, the only way was to destroy the three tribes of the northern borderline. This was the only way out. It had to be said that this idea was extremely bold, but since Jiang Pengji said it, she naturally had the confidence to accomplish it. The hinterland of Dongqing was mostly flat and suitable for cavalry battles. Overall, it was easy to attack and hard to defend. The three tribes of the northern borderline had many horse farms and cavalry. Once Changshu fell, the cavalry of the three tribes of the northern borderline would rush into Dongqing. Based on the current situation, Dongqing would have almost no power to resist. If Jiang Pengji wanted to conquer the world, the three tribes of the northern borderline would be the best springboard. Conquer the northern borderline, destroy Dongqing, resist Nanman, and even destroy Nanman, then contend with the other three countries. To achieve this goal, she still needed an extremely important chess piece. This chess piece must have the ability to help her restrain the nail that the three tribes of the northern borderline had planted in Dongqing, Princess Enchanting. Everything is ready. The only thing left is the wedding of the fourth prince, Wu Majun. Jiang Pengji smiled mysteriously, but Su Ke did not understand. What did this have to do with the wedding of the fourth prince, Wu Majun? Just as he was about to speak, Jiang Pengji's eyes turned cold, causing him to subconsciously swallow the words in his throat. After a while, footsteps were heard from outside. Lang Jun, everything is ready. Takshu's gentle voice came from outside the door. Su Ke silently raised his eyebrows at Jiang Pengji and gave her a look. His Lang Jun was really amazing. The footsteps were so far away, but she could actually hear them. Yes, I'm tired. Go and prepare some hot soup and clean clothes. I want to take a bath later. Takshu bowed and said meekly, yes. Jiang Pengji's eyes darkened. She stood up and took a box from the shelf in the study. Let's stop here. Next, it's time for private matters. Jiang Pengji pushed the box in front of Su Ke and gestured for him to open it. Su Ke opened it according to her instructions. There was no gold, silver, or jewelry in it. There was nothing valuable either. There were only 2 dark yellow bamboo slips. Chapter 332. Su-ko took it out with trembling hands. There seemed to be an undercurrent under his calm expression. He almost couldn't hold back the trembling in his heart. His eyes were filled with tears. Jiang Pengji said lightly, "This is the contract between you and Xuanmei. Take it as a wedding gift." According to the rules of the ancient times, the children of slaves were still slaves. They were born as slaves and were even worse than ordinary people. Jiang Pengji didn't need to use the contract to control them. Their existence would also become their weakness. It was better to take the opportunity to solve it. Return the contract, get rid of the slave status, and be considered good people from now on. I have never regarded you as a servant of the Lu family. This can be seen from the fact that I allowed you to call yourself ku instead of slave all these years. Xuanmei is my personal maid, but I've always treated her like my own sister. We're not family, but we're closer than family. Su-ku, I will be happy to see you marry her. However, if you become successful in the future, don't forget the relationship between you and her when you were young. Su-ku calmed himself down and suppressed the surging emotions in his heart. He bowed deeply to thank her. I will not forget today's promise. Jiang Pengji had warned him several times. How could Su-ku not understand her attitude of protecting Xuanmei? With this guarantee, Jiang Pengji reluctantly chose to believe him. However, the audience in the streaming room was worried. Lo Siji Lianmeng, #rubface. I feel that Su-ku has set up a big flag. Yinuagia Zhuga Chinma, I hope it won't be a slap in the face, but it's a bit dirty. Matrimonial consulting lawyer, sigh. To be honest, based on my personal work experience, I don't think they will succeed. If Su-ku was placed in the modern world, he would be a future rich and handsome man with IQ, looks, and the ability to work. Xuanmei was an ordinary girl with looks but average other conditions. Although they were a good match, their potential was different. Their social status in the future would also be different. Boji and Broom, it can't be that different. Xuanmei's backer is the streamer. Su-ku dares to do this? Lo Siji Lianmeng, the streamer's temper is right. She is protective, but she has her principles. If Sun-mei was self-reliant, the host would definitely be happy to help her. But Sun-mei looked like a conservative ancient woman who was docile and obedient. If Su-ku really let her down in the future, she would probably choose to endure it instead of exploding. Not to mention, it wouldn't be considered as letting her down. After all, in the ancient era, one man had many concubines, and it was legal to have concubines. Jiang Pengji did not miss out on these comments. After a long time, she posted a bullet screen. Host V, I trust Xuanmei and Su-ku. As for their marriage, it was better to give their blessings first. That's right. Only then did the live stream viewers react. She hadn't even gotten married yet, and they were already saying bad things here. This wasn't a good sign. As a result, the screen in the live broadcast room exploded, and all kinds of large rewards fell from the sky. Small rewards like lollipops, lovers' hearts, and blue and white bounties were basically bundled together. Jiang Pengji took a peek at the backstage and saw the notification of rewards appearing like flowing water. Viewer, Inhumane Tycoon, rewarded 99 groups of 1314 lollipops. Viewer, Don't Lack Money, rewarded 666 groups of 520 lovers' hearts. Viewer, Love Su-ku the most, rewarded 1314 blue and white bounties. Further down, there were dazzling blue enchantresses, kidney apples, and other reward props. Apart from these small rewards, the large rewards came in one after another, almost drowning the backstage of the live stream. Viewer, Doraemon, rewarded 99 groups of a pair for a lifetime, wishing Su-ku a happy wedding. Viewer, Shirley Hongzhuang, rewarded 99 luxurious private yachts, wishing Su-ku and his wife a happy marriage. Viewer, Lao Siji Lianmeng, rewarded 99 luxurious private jets, wishing Su-ku and his wife a happy birth. A pair for a lifetime, luxurious private yachts, and luxurious private jets were all reward props of the live stream system. The former was worth 999 popularity points, and the latter two were worth 1,000 popularity points. What did it mean to reward 99 groups of such valuable reward props in one go? Jiang Pengji secretly rolled her eyes. These people usually kept a low profile, but when it was time to join in the fun, they competed with each other. This wave of rewards lasted for a full half an hour. Jiang Pengji counted the points of popularity earned from rewards alone, which was close to 2.6 million. After splitting the points with the system, Joe the exploiter, Jiang Pengji had almost 1.29 million points of popularity in her account. Looking at the points backstage, Jiang Pengji secretly raised her eyebrows. Just as the system said, the more viewers there were in the live stream, the easier it was to obtain popularity points. However, how long could the popularity points the system obtained last time be enough to support its activities? The live stream was already at level 4, which meant that the system needed more popularity points to maintain its daily operation. In the past few years, she had figured out the system's appetite, and controlling it was getting easier and easier. It was just a bunch of copied data. How could it escape her grasp? Host V, you're so generous. Is this considered generous? The audience in the live stream snorted. The streamer had never seen the world. There were many rich people in other live streams, and their actions were considered generous. They rewarded without saying a word. If Jiang Pengji was willing to act cute and call them brothers and uncles, the rewards would be even more. Even if she did not sell her body, there would be many rich people fighting to spend money on her. This was called a child who cried and screamed would get milk. The streamer never cried or made a fuss. She was a clear stream in the live stream world. Host V, it seems that I have to urge Xuanmei and Su-ku to finish their business as soon as possible so that they can have a baby. The audience, they were stunned for a moment, not understanding what Jiang Pengji was referring to. Very quickly, they realized that the unscrupulous streamer was already thinking about the money for the baby's milk powder and the baby's birthday party. No. They seemed to have forgotten something. Could Su-ku and Xuanmei receive the gift of the props rewarded to the streamer? The answer was definitely no. Jiang Pengji would not exchange the popularity points for real money because the system did not support it. However, as the head of the family, Jiang Pengji would naturally prepare a generous dowry for Xuanmei so that she could have a grand wedding. As for Su-ku, she would first give him a few years' salary in advance and organize a grand wedding. Compared to the complicated weddings of rich and powerful families, the weddings of ordinary people were much simpler. Su-ku and Xuanmei's marriage was approved by the head of the family. Next, they could enter the main topic. However, Su-ku was a scholar and valued etiquette very much. Since it was a legal marriage, even if everything was simple, the 3 letters and 6 etiquettes could not be omitted. This matter was handed over to Su-ku's only elder, his widowed aunt, to handle. Xuanmei had stayed in Hejian to take care of Su-ku's aunt for many years. She had long regarded her as her own daughter, so she naturally paid attention to this matter. Jiang Pengji turned off the live stream and took a bath to her heart's content. Just as she put on her pajamas, the footsteps of a maid came from outside. Lang Jun, the dowry that Chongzhou prepared is here. Jiang Pengji smiled after hearing that. Chapter 333. A low-key and simple carriage stopped at the corner gate of the Lu residence. Lady Hui, we've arrived at the Lu residence. The servant girl's gentle voice came from outside the carriage, pulling Hui Jun back from her daydream. She pursed her lips and hid the excess expression on her face. She revealed the perfect smile that she had trained for years and got off the carriage. In front of her was a completely unfamiliar mansion. If it had been a few years ago, she would still have been a lowly prostitute who could be humiliated by anyone. She could have any man for a copper coin. She would have been chased away and insulted by the servants if she had even gone a little closer, not to mention entering such a luxurious mansion. Lady Hui, the servant girl, called out. I'm fine. I'm just overjoyed at the thought of seeing Lang Jun soon. The current Hui Jun smiled shyly. She pressed down the heavy curtain and covered her entire face. Then she handed her hand to the servant girl and let her enter the corner gate. She knew that she was the dowry of the daughter of a concubine in the Lu residence, but she only looked at the energy and investment that the Lu residence had invested in her over the years. Her food, clothing, and shelter were all luxurious. Someone even personally taught her how to read and write, taught her how to evaluate paintings and poems, and told her the rules and taboos among the aristocratic families. Therefore, she did not think that she would only be a dowry who helped others win the favor of her husband. She kept a low profile all the way to a courtyard. Hui Jun saw the second legitimate son of the Lu residence, whom she had met a few years ago. Jiang Pengji was also stunned when she saw Hui Jun. Even she did not expect that a Ko, who had been carefully raised for a few years, would grow into such a peerless beauty. Her hair was as black as ink, her eyebrows were lightly swept, and the jade hairpin in her hair swayed rhythmically. She was beautiful. It seemed that even such boring swaying had become meaningful. She walked with a myriad of postures. Her graceful appearance was like a green willow that had just sprouted in the warm spring. It was unforgettable. She was no longer thin, pitiful, humble, and cowardly. Instead, she was gentle, tranquil, and elegant. A girl changes 18 times between womanhood and womanhood. This saying is true. Jiang Pengji looked at Hui Jun with a gaze that admired a beauty. She was indeed a rare beauty. She was not beautiful enough to captivate birds and beasts, but she could still topple a city. Hui Jun tried her best to stop her spine and used everything she had learned over the years. Although she looked calm on the surface, her heart was pounding like thunder. Her palms were sweaty and her back was stuffy. Her breathing quickened. It was as if the air had become thin when she saw Jiang Pengji for the first time. Hui Jun leisurely sat down and revealed her most perfect smile. She bowed in a textbook manner. Servant Hui Jun greets Lang Jun. Don't be so nervous. Jiang Pengji laughed involuntarily. Hui Jun's demeanor made her feel like she was the dean, while Hui Jun was a nervous student waiting to be inspected. You've done very well all these years. The promise I made to you all those years ago still stands. Hui Jun secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Only now did she realize that her back was drenched in sweat. Since that's the case, can Lang Jun tell Hui Jun what you want me to do? She looked at Jiang Pengji with her clear eyes. Even though the years had worn away the timidity in her bones, she always felt ashamed of her inferiority in front of Jiang Pengji. She wished she could bury herself in the ground so that Jiang Pengji would never see her again. Jiang Pengji tapped on the table. The sound was especially obvious in the quiet room. Will you be the demoness who brings disaster to the country? The demoness who brings disaster to the country? Hui Jun was stunned. Before coming to the Lu residence, countless thoughts had popped up in her mind. But no matter how she guessed, she could not even get close to the truth. Hui Jun smiled bitterly. All the women in the world, even if I'm as impure as I am, will not voluntarily admit that my appearance is inferior to others. However, the demoness who brings disaster to the country. I have some good looks, but I don't have the confidence to compare to the 3,000 beauties in the inner court of the palace. Jiang Pengji nodded. That's true. Hui Jun was indeed very beautiful, but this kind of beauty belonged to the human world. If one worked hard, one could find a beauty who could compare to her. When Hui Jun heard this, her heart felt as if it had been pricked by a needle. It hurt faintly. At that moment, she heard Jiang Pengji say, but I'm asking if you are willing to be the demoness who brings disaster to the country, not anything else. Hui Jun hurriedly replied, of course I am willing. Perhaps it was because she had been humiliated since she was young and had tasted sorrow, but Hui Jun had always longed for someone to save her from this sea of suffering. The person in front of her had done it. That year, she had personally killed the ruffians who had bullied her in the mass grave. She had secretly made up her mind. Even if she had to go through a mountain of knives or a sea of flames, she would not hesitate to give her life to the person in front of her if he asked. One had to know how to be satisfied and grateful. Hui Jun had retained this sincere heart. She understood that after leaving the slums, she had stolen every day. How many prostitutes had died miserably? Even on their deathbed, they were barely clothed, and bystanders had to cover their noses when they saw their corpses. She was the only one who had enjoyed so many years of glory and wealth. Perhaps she could go one step further in the future. Why would she not be satisfied? As soon as she finished speaking, she heard the youth in front of her say to her, "If that's the case, I'll give you some good fortune." Hui Jun lowered her head and bowed. Jiang Pengji was speechless again. It's not that easy to be the demoness who brings disaster to the country. You might even face the situation of being reviled by the people of the world, so consider carefully. Hui Jun shook her head and said, "Lang Juan's words are wrong. So what if I'm the demoness who brings disaster to the country? Isn't that the noblest woman in the world? Everything in the world is at your fingertips. You can live freely and not be trampled on and humiliated by others. You can even make those who were once high and mighty bow or even break their backs. How is that not good? As for what happens to one's reputation after death, one is already dead. Who cares about what happens after death? So what if the people of the world reviled her?" Throughout history, although no femme fatale could end well, no one had the ability to teach them a lesson. No matter how they died, they enjoyed glory and wealth while they were alive. Jiang Pengji choked on Hui Jun's words. She did not expect Hui Jun to think that way. It's naturally the best that you can think that way. Jiang Pengji raised her hand and pointed at the medicine on the table that was still steaming. "Drink it." Hui Jun got up and took 2 small steps. Without asking what the medicine was, she raised her hand and picked up the bowl of black, bitter, and unpleasant medicine. She tilted her slender and fair neck and gulped it down. Jiang Pengji passed her the candied fruit. She accepted it readily and silently kept it in her mouth. When the bitter taste in her mouth was suppressed, she spoke timidly. "Your servant has a wish. Can you fulfill it?" Thinking of her own request, she felt that her tongue was about to be tied. "Sure." Jiang Pengji nodded and agreed. "Lang Jun, can you hug me?" she blurted out. Her heart was faintly filled with hope and apprehension. Jiang Pengji looked into Hui Jun's eyes and suddenly understood. She opened her arms slightly. Chapter 334. Jiang Pengji maintained her posture and patted her back until the breath in her arms gradually calmed down. The medicine that Hui Jun had just drunk was not poison, but a bowl of thick sleeping medicine. Silly girl. She sighed softly and put one hand under Hui Jun's armpit and the other under her legs. She lifted her up easily. "Takshu, no one is allowed to come near the courtyard without my orders." Takshu secretly glanced at the sleeping Hui Jun. Her expression froze for a moment, then disappeared as if it had never appeared. "Your servant understands." She bowed and retreated, gently closing the door of the bedroom. Jiang Pengji turned around and walked into the bedroom. She lifted the thin blanket on the bed and placed the sleeping Hui Jun on it. With a thought, the back end of the system opened the package. There were a few strange cards that shone brightly in color. The system felt vaguely uneasy, but it could not stop Jiang Pengji at all. It could only test her nervously. It deliberately said in a relaxed tone, "Host, what are you doing?" Jiang Pengji did not even frown this time. She just took out all the cards stored in the package and placed them on the table according to the order in which they were obtained. Her slender fingers brushed across the surface of each card, and her eyes revealed a dangerous message. She picked up a card, and the golden words of introduction appeared automatically. XX Masterpiece, Winding Corridor of 9 Turns. Wonderful and unpredictable. You deserve it. No man will be able to live without your charm. Men will be intoxicated and unable to extricate themselves. You will truly have a harem of 3,000 beauties and 3,000 adoration. From then on, the king will not attend morning court. Jiang Pengji glanced at it with a face full of disdain, but she still picked it out. Easy pregnancy pill, the new voice of a young phoenix, Lin Ji shows auspiciousness. Once chosen by the king's side, 3,000 adoration will gather, but flowers will not bloom for 100 days. One can only sigh that beauties age quickly, and men's hearts are fickle. If you have a son by your side, you will definitely stand at the top of the harem and laugh at the flowers competing for beauty. This card was not very useful at the moment. After Jiang Pengji thought about it, she put it away and picked up the third card. Full breasts, wrists raised high, body turned, and breasts covered with silk clothes. A full cleavage is one of a woman's most powerful weapons. Having an impressive chest is undoubtedly a powerful bargaining chip. Other people conquer the world, you conquer the man who can conquer the world. The fourth card. Willow's slender waist, slender and enchanting. A waist that can't even be grasped is every woman's dream. P.S. When this card is used together with full breasts, it will have a miraculous effect and bring men a visual impact. The fourth card had appeared twice. The first time was when the system gave out the reward for the mission, saving Meng Liang. But Jiang Pengji didn't care about the system at that time, so she killed Meng Liang and failed the mission. Later, in the semi-interactive live stream mode, Jiang Pengji started the live stream mission. After completing the mission, she drew a card from the silver chest. The system lived up to its reputation as a harem drama streaming system. It understood the essence of the appearance association, and most of the rewards it gave were to improve one's appearance. Apart from that, there were also quite a number of limb correction devices, such as this one: straight jade legs, long and slender, perfect and flawless. Another example: snow white wrist, slender like a willow, elegant and alluring. Not only did it improve one's appearance, but it also enhanced one's temperament and charm. Cold and aloof, seductive to the bone. After using it, one will have the cold and elegant temperament and natural charm of the goddess of the ninth heaven. Jiang Pengji was also confused by the description of the card. Was her language bad, or was the system contradicting itself? Actually, that was what the system wanted to express: a cold and aloof fairy in front of others, but a slutty woman in bed? But that was not the main point. Jiang Pengji had always thought that it was the most shameless of all the cards. Eternal, virgin, use this card and you will have the firmness of a virgin. When used together with XX masterpiece, both of them will have a qualitative improvement, allowing a man to enjoy eternal happiness. The emperor loves color. A moment of freshness won't make him linger on you. Only by being fresh all the time can his heart and body be attached to you, so that the emperor's favor in the harem will never fade. Other than that, there were other cards with different functions. For example, she had delicate snow-white skin, silky black hair, light pink fingernails, cherry blossom-colored lips, mesmerizing eyes, long and thick eyelashes like a small fan, slender and sensitive neck. Jiang Pengji did not slack off in the past few years. She did live streaming when she needed to, and she did it in whatever mode she needed to. With such diligent work, she gradually accumulated a large pile of cards over the years. At the beginning, the rewards given by the system were more expensive. As time went on, the cards that were drawn became more and more ordinary. Basically, they only modified and optimized parts of the body, while some increased some charm. Jiang Pengji did not expose the system and pretended that she did not know. System, you're so smart. Why can't you guess what I'm going to do? Jiang Pengji sneered coldly and mocked. We've been tied together for almost 4 years. Don't you know me well enough after such a long time? Do you think I'll use these cards on myself? Of course, I'm not taking them out to admire the contents. Guess what I'm going to do? System, it did not dare to guess. Jiang Pengji said, I remember I asked you before. These cards do not take effect instantly. No matter how powerful the system was, it could not complete plastic surgery for someone in an instant. According to Jiang Pengji's knowledge, the effects of all cards were slowly modified based on the user's foundation. The length of the modification depended on the final effect. For example, temperament modification, most of them only required 1 or 2 days. Others required 10 days to half a month. The system did not want to say anything, but Jiang Pengji's actions made it anxious. Host, using items produced by the system on someone other than the host is against the relevant regulations of the system. Jiang Pengji sneered coldly and threw out a card. The system looked at it and was suddenly speechless. The content of the card was a little ridiculous. Yang Baoxiang, natural body fragrance. When a man smells it, his sexual desire will increase greatly. It can increase the pleasure of a couple's bedroom and make a man not impotent for a long time. The card used a woman's body as a carrier, but the one who benefited in the end was the man. Strictly speaking, it was considered to be used by someone other than the host. Jiang Pengji carefully studied the original contract. There was no such clause. The system's words could deceive unfamiliar people, but to deceive her? Haha. The system tolerated it and finally chose to curl up. It was powerless to stop Jiang Pengji's actions. Chapter 335. Huijuan's face quickly turned red. She furrowed her brows as if she was enduring great pain. She grabbed Jiang Pengji's sleeves with both hands and curled up her body like a prawn. Her skin was covered with a thin layer of sweat. She looked very helpless and pitiful. One could not help but feel pity for her. Jiang Pengji blinked her eyes. Her mind, which had yet to waver, calmed down again. The system said, "Host, you're digging your own grave. You've seen her at her worst. Aren't you afraid that she'll harm you once she gains power? You have to know that some people in this world deserve to be trusted, and some don't." Jiang Pengji curled her lips and said firmly, "It's obvious that Huijun has the right to be trusted by me. I won't doubt someone I trust, unless she betrays me." It was not an easy task to plot against Jiang Pengji. You saying such naive words only proves that you don't understand people's hearts well enough. The system said coldly, "Human nature is very complicated. The person in front of you is obviously not someone of noble character and unquestionable integrity. Host, you did pull her out from the lowest point of her life. She will indeed be grateful to you and want to repay you with her body. But once she gets to a higher place, this experience will be a dark history that she needs to erase." Jiang Pengji laughed mockingly. "You're a system, and you want to teach me what human nature is?" The system choked hard at her words. If it had an expression, its face would be as black as ink and as gloomy as water. After a while, the system spoke in a strange tone. "Actually, host, you shouldn't have satisfied her request just now. She already knows your gender." Jiang Pengji asked, "Why?" The system said, "According to the analysis of the system's data, this woman adores you and admires you. If you didn't expose your gender, she would still be immersed in it. Many facts have proven that women who have a place to return to are far easier to control than women who have no attachments. If she really falls in love with you, she'll work for you for free. Aren't you afraid that she'll turn evil and take the opportunity to stab you?" This time, Jiang Pengji laughed. She thought she was shameless enough, but she didn't expect the system's true colors to be so hateful. "I think you seem to have misunderstood." Jiang Pengji shook her finger and said seriously, "First of all, it's a fair deal between me and Huijun. I'll give her glory and wealth and help her pave the way to the top. In return, she'll work for me and help me achieve my goals. It's only fair. If he used fake feelings to deceive and restrain her, it would be considered as emotional fraud. In my opinion, this is a method that only scum would choose." The system said that Huijun was in love with her, and Jiang Pengji could tell. It was precisely because of this that she agreed to Huijun's request in order to sever her thoughts. It would have been fine if he didn't know about it. However, he clearly knew that Hui Jun was interested in him, yet he pretended not to know about it. He allowed the other party to carry the misunderstanding and become the bride of the Lu residence's younger sister's concubine. According to the plan, he would walk the path of a demoness who brings disaster to the country. If he wasn't scum, then what was he? Jiang Pengji didn't have any moral values, but she couldn't bring herself to bully the feelings of the weak. On the other hand, the system that made such a suggestion, that's all you've got. There was nothing to fear. Hui Jun slept soundly for the entire night, almost dreamless until daybreak. Ever since she could remember, she didn't know that she could sleep so peacefully and so relaxed. She got up in a daze, and the unfamiliar blanket covering her slid down as she moved. She couldn't help but be startled. Looking around, she realized that the furnishings were very clean and neat, and there was a faint fragrance of incense in the air. It didn't look like a lady's boudoir at all. "Are you awake, miss?" An unfamiliar female voice came from outside the room. Hui Jun pursed her lips and said cautiously, "Yes." She had already guessed who the room belonged to. Takshu pushed the door open, and a few maids followed behind her. They carried copper basins, towels, and other things, and silently helped Hui Jun wash up. "Miss, you're really pretty." One of the maids was stunned and couldn't help but murmur. There was a hint of infatuation in her eyes. Hui Jun frowned, feeling puzzled. She knew that she was pretty, but it shouldn't be to the extent that the servants of the Lu residence would be so dazed, right? Looking at the lady in the mirror, Hui Jun's eyes were filled with hesitation. Her face was still the same, and her facial features were still the same, but for some reason, there was something more than the day before that made her even more bewitching. After washing up, Hui Jun secretly calculated in her heart, feeling a little apprehensive. "Your servant offended you yesterday, Lang Jun. Please forgive me." When Hui Jun appeared on the screen of the streaming room, Jiang Pengji seemed to hear countless howls of wolves. She smiled. She wasn't attracted by that bewitching aura, and her eyes were still clear. "You're not guilty, so why do you need to forgive me? Do you want to sit down and eat with me? Your servant will boldly accept your invitation." In ancient times, there were very few varieties of breakfast. Even the gentry only ate a little more meticulously. However, the audience in the streaming room expressed that even if they had watched it for a few years, they still wouldn't get tired of it. Moreover, there was a classical beauty today. She was a feast for the eyes, and they could eat a few more meat buns just by looking at her. The two of them finished their breakfast in silence, and Jiang Pengji dismissed the other servants. "Do you know what to do in the future?" Hui Jun thought about it and said, "Help the second Nyangzi gain favor and fight for the fourth prince's favor?" After all, she was a bride accompanying the bride. Apart from that, she really didn't know what else she could do. However, if that was all, it wouldn't explain the amount of effort the Lus had invested in her. "No, in fact, this has nothing to do with my sister," Jiang Pengji said calmly. "Nothing to do with it?" Hui Jun heard that and her heart skipped a beat. She vaguely understood something. She didn't know about the fight for the throne, and she didn't know which prince was more likely to ascend to the throne in the future. However, since she was going to be a beauty who brought disaster to the country, she would naturally be by the emperor's side and attract all of his attention. She wanted him to be infatuated with her, to the point where he would disregard the laws of the country. The Lus had arranged for her to be a bride accompanying the bride. It was probably not to invest in the fourth prince. "Your servant heard that the emperor is in good health." She probed. The emperor was in good health, which meant that the emperor had many more years to live. It wouldn't be the time for the princes to covet the throne. If she guessed correctly, she wanted her to seduce the fourth prince and use Wuma Jun to go to the emperor's side. Hui Jun's eyes flashed and her expression changed slightly. Jiang Pengji knew that she had guessed the truth. She nodded slowly. "Your servant understands." She took a deep breath and showed the expression of a brave man who had made a decision. "The princess of the second prince is the princess of the northern borderline. Her name is Enchanting. She's about the same age as you, but she's very scheming. Jiang Pengji deliberately mentioned it, and Hui Jun understood. Your servant will deal with this person cautiously. Jiang Pengji said, don't be afraid. You just need to enjoy your life. As for the rest, you can do whatever you want. Your servant isn't afraid. It's worth it to enjoy one more day. Chapter 336. Protect her. At a time when she had become the real demoness who brings calamity to the nation, when everyone in the world wished to eat her blood and eat her flesh, Hui Jun didn't say a word. Her watery eyes flickered with complicated emotions. Hui Jun wasn't willing to believe such a beautiful promise, but her heart betrayed her rationality in an instant. Jiang Pengji added, as I said, this is a fair deal. I'm investing in you, expending my energy to let you enjoy all the riches and wealth in the world. You'll help me achieve my goal. After this is done, I naturally have the responsibility to ensure your safety. Because of Jiang Pengji's promise, the bullet screen in the streaming room changed its style. Previously, they had been sucking up to Huijun's peerless beauty, but now they were cheering Jiang Pengji on. Zwizhen Beishijing, su 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 crispy heavens. Streamer, do you still need someone in your harem? Someone who went to college and knows how to code? AI-Yunji, the streamer is really amazing. She's so broad-minded. I feel like I'm about to be conquered by her even through the screen. Suiwe Zaiji Lusher, #facepalm. I think so too. The host was clearly not flirting with him, but he felt like he had been flirted with. Linglong Mabausuo, although I think that the streamer is just fulfilling the terms of the transaction contract, it's really good. Dora Aming, sigh, since ancient times, there have been many people who used women to mess up the imperial court and then burned the bridge after achieving their goals. They should all learn from the streamer. Thinking about how those guys would throw the pot at a femme fatale, I would still choose the streamer. It was a fair transaction, ensuring the interests of both parties and abiding by the terms of the contract. It felt so refreshing. Of course, among the 150,000 viewers, there were bound to be some who disliked Jiang Pengji. Wuyuqingxian, #picknose. Promises that aren't fulfilled are just bullsh*t. Who knows how she'll burn the bridge after crossing it? Ishuang chopsticks, what's Su exploding heaven? I feel so embarrassed. I just think it's disgusting and pretentious. Only a fool would believe it. Sans Hisong Shiningsher, to the commenters above, just because you can't do it doesn't mean that the host can't do it. Let me return a sentence to you. The host's words are a promise, but is your malicious speculation the truth? His face was as big as a basin. I don't know if the host is Su or not, but I know that she is very responsible and broad-minded. Of course, a man who dared to point his sword at the throne couldn't even protect a woman. Hui Jun did not know that there was an audience watching the live broadcast, nor did she know about their comments. She was not a fool, but she still chose to believe them. Since you've said so, your servant will wait for Langjuan's arrival at Shangyang Palace. Before that, she wanted to live well and live more freely than anyone else. All right. Jiang Pengji scrutinized Huijun's appearance. Those cards did not take effect instantly. There was a buffer period in between, and the user's original appearance would gradually change. The first to take effect were the temperament and minor adjustments cards. The current Hui Jun already possessed a mysterious aura that bewitched people with every move she made. Her eyes also had a deep allure to them. If one was not on guard, it would be very easy to be attracted by her. Cover your face with a veil for the time being. Wait until my stepsister and Wuma Jun. Then, you will look for an opportunity and wait for the right time to act. Hui Jun nodded. Your servant will bear that in mind. As long as she firmly hooked onto Wuma Jun and won his favor, Hui Jun did not believe that she could not find an opportunity to get close to the emperor. Jiang Pengji thought of a certain detail and mentioned it to Hui Jun, lest she break a taboo in the future and be harmed instead. Your appearance is very similar to the white moonlight in the Emperor's heart. Use this well. It may become a sharp weapon for you. If you can replace the white moonlight, that would be the best. Jiang Pengji smiled coldly and said to Hui Jun, of course, you don't have to deliberately imitate that person's words and actions. After all, a substitute can never replace the original. Only by becoming another white moonlight, the beloved of the Emperor, can you gradually erase everything that the previous person left in the Emperor's heart. As for how exactly to do it, you're so smart. You can figure it out yourself. White moonlight? Hui Jun did not understand. She did not understand what the term meant. A sweetheart that one wishes for but cannot get. Or, in other words, one has already obtained but has no choice but to give up for some reason. Huijuan's eyes widened in surprise. In the hearts of the people, the Emperor was the most omnipotent person in the world. There was actually a person in this world that the Emperor could not obtain? Oh yes, after you enter the palace, remember to secretly investigate the Wang family. The late Wang Guifei was the birth mother of the fourth prince, Wu Majun. Hui Jun silently remembered all of this. She tilted her head, her eyes filled with doubt. I wonder what kind of temperament the white moonlight in the Emperor's heart has? Jiang Pengji thought about it and said, probably the kind of weak woman who can't breathe without a man. Your servant understands. Since the white moonlight was a gentle fairy, Jiang Pengji would take the bold path and be a seductive enchantress. After temporarily settling Huijuan's matter, she rummaged through her little treasury and picked out many good things for Xuanmei's dowry. As she was listing out the items, Takshu, who was outside the house, pushed the door open slightly. She bowed and said, Lang Jun, the second Nyangzi requests to see you. The second Nyangzi? That stepsister? Jiang Pengji frowned. She rummaged through Lu Shi's memory and could only find a vague, young figure. Although they lived in the same house, Lu Shi had almost zero contact with his stepsister. After Jiang Pengji came here, she had never seen her. Later, she went to Langyi to study, so she had never seen the legendary second Nyangzi of the Lu residence. Let her come in. Jiang Pengji tidied up the table. Not long after, light footsteps and the rustling of clothes came from behind the screen. When she saw her stepsister's face, she suddenly smiled. She completely understood Lu Shi's intentions. Why did he insist on marrying her stepsister to Wu Majun? Have a seat, we're a family, there's no need to be restrained. The second Nyangzi sat down according to her words. She looked at Jiang Pengji for a long time without speaking. Her gaze was timid, as if she had been bullied. The two of them looked at each other. Neither had the intention of taking the initiative to break the silence. In the end, it was the stepsister who could not bear it anymore. She nervously twisted her handkerchief and secretly bit her lower lip. Brother Shi, I'm here today, for a favor. What is it? I'm about to marry into the royal family, but my birth mother still has no status. Jiang Pengji interrupted her and said, and then? Brother Shi, can you write a letter to father? My identity in the residence is rather awkward. If I marry into the royal family, which has strict rules, and someone uses my birth mother's matter to poke my nose, father and brother Shi will lose face, won't they? Jiang Pengji narrowed her eyes and looked at her stepsister. Whether her words were true or false, could not be hidden from Jiang Pengji's eyes. Chapter 337. Her stepsister choked on her words, but she still didn't give up and said, I just want to give my birth mother a title. I have no other intentions. Her father had been away from home for many years and had never been to the backyard. She was depressed and could only rely on her younger sister. Now, little sister was about to marry into the royal family and become someone else's wife. In the future, she would no longer have the opportunity to serve mother. Brother Shi, as children, you and I should understand this worry. Her stepsister spoke very sincerely. Her eyes were faintly filled with tears, which moved the hearts of those who saw it. The audience in the live broadcast room also softened. Tudu Faccio, she's quite a filial girl. I think it's normal for her to help her lowly mother get a status. Noodle House head chef, sigh, he looks so pitiful. Lo Cg Lianmeng, what a pity. The host was born from his first wife. This concubine-born sister and the host were not born from the same mother. In modern terms, would you want to help a mistress get a proper status just because your half-sister is pitiful? Isn't this a joke? Go to the toilet with fingers. The problem is that ancient times and modern times are different. In ancient times, it was legal for people to have multiple wives, okay? They were not mistresses. Inuajia juga chinma. It's legal for a man to have more than one wife, not 3 or 4 wives. In addition, I've been following the live broadcast room for several years. My stepsister's birth mother can't even be considered a concubine. How can she have the face to ask for a status? Although it was called filial piety, it was actually more of a threat. Jiang Pengji frowned and glanced at the bullet screen in the streaming room. She sent a bullet screen to quell the debate. Host V, my stepsister is not my biological daughter, she was adopted. She didn't know, but her biological mother definitely knew. Naturally, she wouldn't urge her to ask for a title. This could only be her own idea. If she was really filial, she could have written a letter to her father after she got married. She hadn't even gotten married yet she came to me to tell me about this. In the name of filial piety, it was actually a threat. How could her thoughts be pure? She was Lu Shi's only legitimate son, but she was now 15 years old. In ancient times, she would have been a man who could have married and started a career. What kind of adult's son would interfere with the status of his father's concubine? Jiang Pengji looked at him coldly and asked, first of all, you only have one mother, which is your father's legal wife. Secondly, mother had helped father take care of the backyard for many years. Had she ever mistreated anyone? If your words spread out, are you trying to accuse mother of being unjust, saying that she was harsh and sinister? His sister's face turned pale and she did not dare to speak again. Jiang Pengji took out a booklet from the table and threw it to her. She said, this is the list of dowry that I prepared for you. It's more than enough. You don't have to be petty with me. You can go and look at the other concubine daughters. Which one of them has such a generous dowry? Marrying the 4th prince was the best marriage that father had planned for you. Mother was afraid that you would feel inferior and think too much, so she opened the treasury to prepare for your marriage. His stepsister's face looked as if it had been painted with several layers of lime water. It was deathly pale, and her eyes were filled with terror as if her thoughts had been seen through. Jiang Pengji squinted her eyes and said in an impolite tone, don't think that the manor lacks anything from you. I don't owe you or your birth mother anything. You are going to marry into the royal family and have a meteoric rise, but so what? You said that as a child, I should understand your filial piety, but you are also going to be a wife. Shouldn't you understand the feelings of a legal wife? A mere concubine's daughter is going to marry into a noble family. A large amount of dowry has been set aside for her marriage, and you still have to promote a thorn in your side to disgust yourself. How can mother keep her face? His stepsister picked up her dowry list. She did not look at the contents listed at the back, but the items at the front were enough to dazzle her. Just as Jiang Pengji had guessed, his stepsister came this time with her own intentions. She reminded Lu Shi and his son not to forget that she was going to join the royal family. She represented the face of the Lu manor, so the dowry list could not be too small. If it was not enough, she should be given a good reputation. Even if she could not be recorded as a legal mother, she should be given the status of a concubine to her birth mother. Jiang Pengji said leisurely, you are a young lady who is going to get married. Don't meddle in the affairs of father's backyard. After she finished speaking, his stepsister was filled with joy and fear. She casually found an excuse to return to her courtyard. Looking at her stepsister's back as she left, Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and threw the matter to the back of her mind. In another place, Suku's aunt happily chose an auspicious day. The tailor was measuring Suku's figure. "Aunt, choose an early date. It's best to get it done within half a month," Suku said. His aunt was doubtful. "Half a month? That's too rushed. Xuanmei will be treated unfairly." It took a lot of time to complete the 3 letters and 6 rituals. If they were to prepare for marriage within half a month, it would inevitably be simpler. Suku said helplessly, "If we don't get married within half a month, I don't know if there will be a chance in the future." "What do you mean?" His aunt was puzzled. She immediately thought of something. "Is it possible that Xuanmei is unwilling? Or do you want to change your mind?" "No." Suku frowned and comforted his aunt. "It's just that the current situation is unforgiving. Lang Jun has great ambitions, so Ku naturally has to follow by his side. This time, Lang Jun will send the second mother of the main family to Shangjing to get married. I'm afraid there will be other variables. If we're unlucky, we won't have peaceful days in the next few years. I'm afraid that Xuanmei will be delayed. So, Ku thinks it's better to get married first." His aunt did not know what the variables were, but she knew that Suku would not joke about such things. She was suddenly in a dilemma. Suku said in a low voice, "After we get married, I'll compensate her properly." His aunt's face turned cold. She understood that according to Suku and Xuanmei's age, they really could not be delayed any longer. After a long time, she said, "Forget it. We're ordinary people. We just want to have a lively and festive event. We can save the unnecessary formalities." Looking at the time, there was a good day in 11 days. If Xuanmei agrees, then it's settled. But you have to compensate her properly in the future. If you mistreat her, I'll be the first to not forgive you. Suku nodded. "Don't worry, aunt. I know." Although the wedding was a little rushed, it was not chaotic. On the day the dowry was shown, the generous dowry that Jiang Pengji prepared for Xuanmei made the neighbors jealous. All the neighbors said that Suku was very lucky to be able to marry such a beautiful woman. Jiang Pengji even used Suku's wedding as a semi-interactive live stream. She explained the wedding process in detail to the live stream audience. On that day, there were especially many live stream audience members who sent gift money. The gifts almost flooded the backstage. 3 days after the wedding, Jiang Pengji did not disturb the two of them and let them continue to be intimate. But time flew. Xuanmei, who was dressed like a married woman, had already prepared the wedding gifts for her newly married husband. The two of them sat on the couch and looked at each other in silence. There was no other newlywed couple like them, who had to be separated after a few days of marriage. After thinking for a while, Xuanmei said, "Be careful when you're outside. I'll take care of everything at home." Suku nodded and held her hands with both of his. He said guiltily, "I'm sorry." "That's good. After all, this is my own choice. I'm afraid that in the future, my husband will find out that I'm not what I look like and dislike me." Xuanmei's lips moved. Her eyes were filled with hesitation. After a long time, she actually took the initiative to hug Suku's waist. Also, Never let Lang Jun and Takshu be alone. Suku was dumbfounded. Chapter 338. Betrayal? Suku woke up from his daze. He looked serious and subconsciously held Sunmei's hand. "When did this happen?" Xuanmei sighed and looked worried. She said in a pleading tone, "It's really inconvenient for me to say more about this matter, but don't worry. Lang Jun is a clever person. I'm afraid Takshu won't be able to deceive her. I really don't want to talk about the past. But, could Suku stop here? Tell me clearly. Tell me what you can." Suku sighed. His eyes became especially serious. "Since you and I have become husband and wife, we are naturally one. We share blessings and misfortunes. If this matter is not serious, I will confess to Lang Jun for you and ask for leniency. If it is serious, I will find a way to bear it for you, but you can't deliberately hide it. Sun Mei was speechless. How could she tell him about this? The newlyweds, who were supposed to sleep together and tell each other about their love, looked at each other in silence. The atmosphere became dignified and tense. Sun Mei, you are willing to marry me because you want to find another way out, right? Suddenly, Su Ku looked at Sun Mei with burning eyes. The depth and probing in his eyes seemed to be able to peel off Sun Mei and see through her heart. Sun Mei's lips moved. Under such a gaze, she couldn't say anything to deceive him. Her slender white hands unconsciously twisted a corner of the quilt. She couldn't help but avoid Su Ku's direct gaze. If there was a crack in the ground at this moment, she would want to hide in it to give her some sense of security. Su Ku sighed and said sincerely, I was born as a commoner. I had no official title or contribution. Later, I committed a murder case because of my mother. I was sent to prison and was punished. Although I was pardoned, I was still a lowly person and was sold. If I wasn't lucky enough to meet Lang Jun, I don't know what kind of situation I would be in now. At least, I wouldn't have such a happy and peaceful life like now. My aunt could live out her old age, and I had a beautiful wife by my side. Therefore, to me, Lang Jun is more important than my life. Sun Mei's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't help but clench her fists. Actually, I used to wonder what kind of luck I had to make you, who was by my Lang Jun's side, fall in love with me at that time. Now that he thought about it, there seemed to be a hidden reason. This hidden reason probably involved a lot of things. Xuanmei, since you've married me, you'll be husband and wife in this life. I'll never abandon you. So, no matter what it is, you and I will face it together. When Su Ku went to Shangjing with Jiang Pengji for the first time, Xuanmei expressed her feelings to him, but he did not agree. It was not that he was not moved, but he carefully considered his own conditions and future. He felt that he should not delay such a good woman, so he tactfully declined. But in the next few years, he saw Xuanmei's efforts and remembered it in his heart. His aunt repeatedly told him how filial and obedient Xuanmei was, and how deeply she loved him. Because of all these, even if Su Ku had a heart of stone, he couldn't help but feel pity and admiration for her. Su Ku held Sun Mei's hand and realized that her palms were covered in cold sweat and her fingers were still trembling. I don't know much about this either. After a long time, when the candle in the room was burning quietly, Xuanmei hesitantly opened her mouth. You don't know much? Su Ku was even more confused. Why would I lie to you at this moment? Xuanmei lowered her head. Her long eyelashes cast a fan-shaped shadow. I really don't know much. In fact, I'm not from Dongqing. I'm originally from a small village at the border of Zhongzhou. I still remember that there was a drought in my hometown. There was no harvest for thousands of miles of wilderness. Every family would fight to the death for a bit of tree bark. From Zhongzhou? Su Ku was shocked. He hurriedly gathered his thoughts and listened carefully to Xuanmei's story. Later, my father was instigated by someone and actually wanted to sell my mother to a brothel in exchange for some food. I was stubborn at that time and was famous for being shrewd. It was as if my heart was covered with lard. I raised a kitchen knife and chopped the man until he was half dead. Xuanmei's calm narration made Su Ku shocked and distressed. He was afraid that she dared to kill her father, but the reason she did it was because she had no other choice. As for distressed, it was naturally because he felt sorry for the young Xuanmei. I was extremely afraid. Every time I closed my eyes, it was as if there was a malicious spirit surrounding me, wanting to take my life. Killing one's father was an unforgivable crime. Even if her father was not dead, Xuanmei was so afraid that she wanted to escape. However, a large-scale drought and food shortage created a large number of refugees. Xuanmei was still very young at that time and could not protect herself at all. In the end, she was caught by human traffickers and secretly sold to Dongqing, which was adjacent to Zhongzhou. Xuanmei found an opportunity to escape. Hearing that Xuanmei escaped from the hands of human traffickers, Su Ke could not help but think of himself. He was also prepared to escape, but Jiang Pengji intercepted him and his plan went to waste. Later, I became a child beggar. I met an old beggar and learned some stealing skills. I was so hungry that I went to steal. That day, I accidentally stole the jade pendant from the late madam's waist. Speaking of this, Xuanmei couldn't help but burst into a smile. Fortunately, this servant was lucky to meet the late madam, who was kind and generous. If it was someone else, I'm afraid they would have been beaten to death. The late lady, who was Gu Min, felt that Xuanmei was pitiful. She was also a girl. If she continued to wander the streets, her future would be ruined. She had the body of a beauty. When she grew up, wouldn't the hooligans have designs on Xuanmei? Therefore, Gu Min brought Xuanmei back to the Lu residence and made her a servant in the residence. She guaranteed that she would not be hungry for 3 meals a day. I thought that this would be the end of my life. I would marry a manservant after I reached marriageable age. When I got older, I would become a wet nurse in the residence and serve the young master. Unexpectedly, the late lady's health deteriorated day by day. That year, when the plum blossoms were in full bloom, she suddenly passed away. After Gu Min passed away, only Lu Shi was left. The entire Lu residence was shrouded in dark clouds. Lu Shi carefully selected and finally chose Xuanmei and Takshu to be his personal servants. He secretly ordered someone to teach them martial arts. Looking at the root, Xuanmei's background was very clean. She was indebted to the late Gu Min, so she would not harm Gu Min's bloodline. Lu Shi thought very well and made very thorough arrangements, but his plans could not keep up with the changes. Chapter 339. Su Ke asked, "Is there something wrong with this couple?" Xuanmei nodded. "I was young when I escaped from my hometown, but I could still remember what my parents looked like. They were strangers. How could they be my parents? But they brought my parents' belongings." Xuanmei sensed something was wrong, so she pretended to admit it. The family had a private conversation for a while. She was told that her parents and younger siblings were all in the hands of the other party. If she was not willing to obey, those people would die. On the contrary, if she was obedient, her parents and younger siblings could live a good life. Xuanmei was skeptical. She did not care about her father's life, but she could not abandon her mother and younger siblings. "I promised to be their informant and mole." Speaking of this, Xuanmei's expression became a little weird, but that group of people only asked me to keep an eye on the second Nyangzi in the backyard. If there is any unusual movement, I must report it. Xuanmei was really confused by such a strange order, but she obeyed and carefully monitored the second Nyangzi all these years. Her daily life was either reading, painting, or doing needlework. She was sunbathing, admiring flowers, and playing with the maids around her. Su Ke asked, "What's going on with Takshu?" Which lunatic would stare at the daughter of a concubine in the backyard of the Lu residence? Both husband and wife were confused by this question. I didn't know that Takshu was also a mole at first. But Takshu and I are both Langjuan's personal maids. We have a lot of interactions, so I gradually noticed her abnormality. She is especially attentive to the second Nyangzi, and some of her actions are also very suspicious. Su Ke nodded. "But, what's so strange about the second Nyangzi? Why is she being watched by a strange force?" Xuanmei shook her head. "I don't know either." Su Ke was speechless. Probably because the content of the reports is similar, fewer and fewer people contact me, who would have the time to listen to a girl's daily life. It would be boring if they listened too much. Without them, I don't know how my mother and younger sister-in-law are doing. I had no choice but to find a way. I used my connections and asked the servants of the Lu residents who did business in Zhongzhou to help me find out. Unexpectedly, my father did not survive the drought. In the end, my mother voluntarily sold herself to a brothel to let my younger sister-in-law live. It's just that they had a hard life. Their younger brother was beaten to death by a local ruffian, and their younger sister was murdered. They're all gone. In other words, that group of people was deceiving Sun Mei. Not long after Sun Mei received the real news about her family, the swindler who hadn't appeared for a few years appeared again. I really want to see what kind of tricks these people have up their sleeves. I'll just feign civility with them. Some killing intent flashed in Xuanmei's eyes. She said coldly, but this time, they don't care about the second Nyangzi. They even ordered me to keep an eye on Lang Jun. Su Ku asked, when did this happen? Xuanmei thought for a moment. About 3 years ago, Lang Jun implemented the food purchase restriction and was preparing to go to Shangjing. The change of command made Sun Mei vigilant. Thinking of the late wife's appreciation, she could not do anything to hurt Lu Shi. Are there any other orders besides keeping an eye on Lang Jun? Xuanmei said, there is such a saying, but I think it's best if you don't listen to it. After listening to Xuanmei's explanation, Su Ku relaxed a lot. At the very least, up until now, Sun Mei had not made a huge mistake. There was still room for redemption. Therefore, his tone was also a lot more relaxed. What on earth is it that I can't listen to it? Xuanmei secretly rolled her eyes. The other order that the informant gave me was to make Lang Jun become a well-behaved noble lady while he is still unsettled. Su Ku was dumbfounded. No matter how heroic Lang Jun is, he is still an upright man. How can he be molded into a well-behaved noble lady? Xuanmei sneered. That's why I said it's better if you don't listen to it. Su Ku was speechless. He still did not understand. These orders made me panic, so I wanted to stop at the brink of the cliff. Xuanmei feigned civility with those informants while thinking about a way out. Then she met Su Ku. My original plan was to marry you, and then use the money I have saved over the years to redeem our marriage contract. After that, I would go far away. Before Xuanmei finished, Su Ku interrupted her. If you want to leave the Lu mansion, you don't have to marry. Xuanmei rolled her eyes. Darling, it's easy for you to say that. I am a young girl. How can I be safe walking outside alone? I'm just afraid that before I go far, I will already be targeted by sneaky people and be sold to those shady places. Su Ku was speechless. Moreover, you don't have to belittle yourself. Among all the servants in the Lu mansion, even if you have a tattoo on your face, your appearance is still the best, not to mention your knowledge and way of talking. For a girl, isn't he a good candidate for a husband? Xuanmei knew her identity, and she did not want to climb up the social ladder. However, she had to find someone that suited her. She pestered Su Ku at first because she was in a hurry to escape from the Lu mansion, but later, she really wanted to marry Su Ku. Then you reminded me to be wary of Takshu. Did the orders given by the informant change again? Xuanmei sighed and said, maybe I want to marry you too much, so I acted improperly and made those people hate me. What do you mean? Takshu tested me a few times. At first, it was just a warning, but it gradually became more malicious. Until the day before the wedding, Takshu looked at me with murderous eyes, as if she was looking at a dead person. From this, it can be seen that those people did not want me to live. She tested me a few times, but I dealt with her cautiously. Then, Takshu believed that I was tight-lipped and did not leak anything about them. Xuanmei smiled mockingly when she said that. Takshu thought that she had concealed it well, but Xuanmei gradually realized that Lang Jun had probably already found out. Putting aside everything else, when Lang Jun went to Langyi to study, she initially wanted to go with him. However, Lang Jun spoke strangely and asked her to stay in Hejin County. He even hinted that if she wanted to pursue Su Ku, it would be better to start with the people around him and leave a good impression. Therefore, Xuanmei stayed, and Lang Jun took Takshu away. Now that she thought about it, Xuanmei could not help but wonder, did Lang Jun do that with the intention of protecting her? After all, if she did not separate from Takshu, there would be an accident sooner or later. It was a pity that Takshu did not realize this. Takshu wants to kill me. I'm afraid, you will soon be a widower. Suku's face turned cold when he heard that. He hugged Xuanmei tightly. He reprimanded her gently. Why are you talking about these inauspicious things? Xuanmei smiled happily and rested her head on his shoulder. When that time comes, will you still remember me, husband? I won't be a widower. You still want to be a mother. After that, the couple covered themselves with the quilt. The quilt turned red, and the room was full of spring. The clouds disappeared and the rain stopped. Suku got up and washed his body with warm water. Then, he changed into his daily clothes. You sleep first. I'm going to find Langjun to ask for his opinion. This matter cannot be delayed. Xuanmei nestled in the quilt and held her chin. Cannot be delayed? Then why weren't you serious just now? Chapter 340. Su Xiaoyu, you'd better give me a good reason. She controlled her strength and slammed the table. The sound was so loud that it made people's ears itch. Jiang Pengji didn't have a bad temper, but who would like to be woken up at a critical moment when they were sound asleep? The weather in Hejian County was cold, not to mention the temperature in the middle of the night. It was chilly as if she had been thrown into an ice house. She waited patiently for Su Ku to speak. She wanted to know what kind of big matter it was that made him abandon his warm and fragrant wife and come to disturb her sleep in the cold air. Thinking of the hot bed and the soft quilt, Jiang Pengji couldn't be nice to Su Ku. Sitting on the seat of honor, she rubbed her face to dispel her sleepiness and stared at Su Ku, who was kneeling in front of her. Su Ku had just been married, but he could hold his wife and have sex with her. It was hard not to feel hot. But she was just a single dog, all alone. If the heat in the blanket ran away, she would have to warm it up again, okay? Why are you here in the middle of the night, instead of holding your wife and carrying on the family line? Jiang Pengji's tone was harsh. There was still a red sleep mark on one side of her face, which showed how bad her mood was. Su Ku coughed secretly. He was a little uneasy. He only remembered that the matter was important, but he forgot that it was not a good time to disturb her. Most of them had fallen into a deep sleep, including Jiang Pengji. I have something important to tell you, Langjun. Please calm down a little. He was really afraid that Jiang Pengji would be in a fit of anger. After hearing about Sun Mei, she would add fuel to the fire and accidentally hurt her teammates. Say it. I'm very calm now. Jiang Pengji said with a long face. Her mood was obviously not as good as she said. Su Ku was speechless and thought for a while. This matter is related to my wife, Xuanmei. Please forgive her this time, considering that she has been by your side and carefully took care of you. If you are still angry after hearing this, you can blame it on me. I only hope that you can give her a chance to make up for her mistakes. Su Ku said solemnly. He told her everything Sun Mei had told him, no matter how big or small. It was not difficult to explain the matter clearly. The difficult part was how to avoid the important and dwell on the trivial, so as to remove Xuanmei from this matter. Fortunately, Xuanmei hadn't really done anything wrong yet. Confessing would actually result in a lighter sentence. However, Jiang Pengji's reaction was beyond Su Ku's expectation. Even if she didn't fly into a rage, she should have shown a gloomy and angry expression. After all, Sun Mei's actions had already constituted betrayal. I knew about this a long time ago, but I didn't expect Xuanmei to confess to you so soon. As soon as Jiang Pengji spoke, Su Ku's expression changed. She continued, Xuanmei is very tight-lipped, and she's very defensive. As far as I know, you're the only one she's told. At first I thought she would keep it a secret until it was too late. If the news gets out, she'll be in an awkward situation. Xuanmei's act of betrayal could be called unjust and disloyal. As her husband, how could Su Ku not feel disgusted by such a woman? Not to mention that Xuanmei had betrayed the Lu residence. The Lu residence was indebted to Xuanmei and Su Ku. As a scholar, it was impossible for him to accept such a stain on his reputation. When did you know about it? Su Ke was dumbfounded. If Xuanmei hadn't taken the initiative to tell him, he wouldn't have noticed. Jiang Pengji smiled. There's no perfect plan in this world. Xuanmei and Takshu aren't professional spies, so they're not good at hiding. Some of their actions are different from usual. As long as you're careful, you'll notice. Su Ke was startled when he heard that. He seemed to be thinking about something. Xuanmei took the initiative to tell you about it, which also shows her position, Jiang Pengji said. She looked into Su Ke's eyes and said, go back and comfort her, lest she thinks too much. As for Takshu, we can't touch her for now, but I'll take her away. The Lu residence is usually heavily guarded, so the people in the dark won't dare to extend their claws in. Xuanmei is just an unimportant chess piece, so she won't be in danger. Su Ke sat on his knees with his hands clenched into fists. His expression was inexplicably complicated. You don't care about Xuanmei's mistakes? She didn't do any substantial harm, and she's your wife. Why should I care about her mistakes? Jiang Pengji shook her head and said, in fact, when Xuanmei wanted to marry you, I didn't plan to settle the score. Su Ke was stunned and asked, why? She's a smart woman. I think she already realized that her future was uncertain, so she wanted to retreat and get out of the swamp. You said it yourself, she took care of me for many years, and our relationship is no less than that of a biological brother and sister. If that's the case, why would I kill her because of the harm that hasn't happened yet? I gave her a chance, and fortunately, Xuanmei didn't let me down. Su Ke was silent for a long time after hearing that. I don't support the marriage between you and Xuanmei. Do you know why? Jiang Pengji explained in detail, there are two reasons. First, you, Su Xiaoyu, are not an ordinary person. People's hearts change. If you become successful in the future, and Xuanmei is just an ordinary woman, I'm afraid she won't be able to keep you, and you'll end up as a resentful couple. Second, even if I forgive her, it'll always be a hidden danger if I don't say it out loud. Fortunately, Xuanmei took the initiative to confess, which left a great buffer for the contradiction. It could be said that she made up for her mistake. After a long time, Jiang Pengji added, I don't blame her. In fact, there was really nothing to blame. She yawned and said sleepily, if there's nothing else, go back and hug your wife. Don't disturb my sleep. Su Ke didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He thought the matter was serious, so he came here in the middle of the night, but he didn't expect to get such an outcome. Ke thanks you on behalf of my wife. Su Ke had reason to believe that the person in front of him had a rare breadth of mind. Are you done? Jiang Pengji supported her head with one hand, and sleepiness came over her. The couple was fighting, and she, as a single dog, was disturbed from her sleep. She could only fight with her eyelids. Su Ke also knew how to read people's faces. He knew that Jiang Pengji was sleepy, so he bowed and left. Jiang Pengji took a deep breath and tried to keep her eyes open. She crawled back to the bed with her hands and feet, hugging the quilt and rolling to the inside of the bed. The world was big, but sleep was the most important. Anything else could wait until dawn. Su Ke carried the lantern back to his room. There was a lamp in the room, and the orange candlelight warmed his heart. It settled. He took off his outer shirt and put it aside. He hugged Xuanmei's waist and sighed as he rested his head on her shoulder. It settled? So fast? Xuanmei waited anxiously, and her heart was anxious. Yes, Lang Jun is broad-minded. Ordinary people can't be compared to him. I've informed him about this, so it should be settled. Xuanmei lowered her eyelids, and her heart finally fell to the ground. We're leaving tomorrow. Su Ke whispered, but it's still early. My wife, settle down. Huh? Chapter 341. Although she had been disturbed by Su Ke once, Jiang Pengji's sleep quality had always been excellent. The sky had just turned bright. When the rooster crowed for the first time, Jiang Pengji woke up on time due to the call of her biological clock. The footsteps of the maids gradually sounded outside the bedroom. With the help of the maids, Jiang Pengji washed her face with warm water to wash away the sleepiness on her face. She became energetic. After washing up, the maids served the food on the table. Not to mention the taste of the breakfast, at least it looked good. It was arranged delicately and beautifully like a work of art. One would have an appetite just by looking at it. However, that morning was not so peaceful. Something disgusting had just happened. Just as Jiang Pengji started the streaming on time and was halfway through her breakfast, Takshu came over to report that her stepsister wanted to see her again. TSK, that dowry list can't even seal her mouth. Jiang Pengji clicked her tongue in displeasure. Her tone was full of sarcasm. She did not hide her malice towards her stepsister. Let her in. She came to look for me before finishing her breakfast. She must be hungry. She's a delicate, noble girl. How can she endure the pain of hunger? If outsiders were to see it, who knows what they would say about this brother of mine, saying that he treated her unfairly. Takshu smiled and echoed, Lang Jun treats his servants so gently. Why would he treat his stepsister harshly? I'll call the second Nyangzi now. Jiang Pengji did not comment. Her expression was still indifferent. Not long after, Jiang Pengji and the audience in the streaming room clearly heard a series of heavy footsteps full of anger approaching. With a swoosh, the hall door was opened. A gust of cold wind rushed in impatiently. Brother Shi, what do you mean by this? Her stepsister sat directly in front of Jiang Pengji. Her eyes were wide open in anger. Her childish face looked a little more ferocious because of her anger. The streaming camera mischievously gave a close-up of her stepsister's face. Her dark nostrils opened and closed, and her heavy breathing was rapid. Many of the audience were shocked. They suddenly felt that the streamer's stepsister was not cute anymore. Jiang Pengji glanced at the bullet screen on the virtual screen. There were many comments like, scared the baby to death, his nostrils are so big, and a sudden close-up shot scared the baby so much that his sleepiness flew away. She saw them, but the corners of her lips did not curl up. She just lifted her eyelids lazily. Sister, what do you mean? Jiang Pengji coldly stared into his eyes and asked word by word, it's early in the morning and you didn't even tidy up your makeup. You came here without makeup to disturb your brother. Is this the self-restraint that a woman of the Liu family should have? His stepsister was choked by these words. Her heated brain cleared up a little, but her expression was still that of anger. I should be the one asking Brother Shi. His stepsister twisted her handkerchief with hatred. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she said with a sorrowful expression, I've finally married into the royal family. It's fine if Brother Shi doesn't think of a way to help me, but why are you deliberately making things difficult for me? These words were very harsh. Which of the viewers in the live streaming room were not veterans who had read countless books on palace and house fights? A little daughter of a mistress talking to her brother like that was obviously asking for a beating. San Nian Bubao, that's too much. I originally thought this loli was very cute, but now I see that she has the potential to be a vicious woman. How did the streamer do her wrong? How dare she point at her nose and criticize her like that? Who does she think she is? Nyanku Sanson, actually, she's not wrong. The streamer does have bad intentions. But from the looks of it, all the streamer's arrangements are for her own good. Others can't find fault with her at all. I remember that in ancient times, the status of a mistress's daughter was very low. Not to mention sending her off with a dowry of 10 miles, it was already good enough that she was not sent off for a political marriage to seek benefits. Sigh, she married a prince and gave him so much dowry, but she was still criticized. Kojiao Shao's Humian, don't quarrel first. Listen to her reason. Jiang Pengji agreed with the viewer's opinion very much. She asked her stepsister coldly. Deliberately making things difficult for me? Do you mean that the dowry is not rich enough, or that the husband's family is not prominent enough, or that the wedding dress is not exquisite and perfect enough? Jiang Pengji made her stepsister swallow her words with a few words. She immediately sneered, "Remember your identity. A mistress's daughter of the Lu residence is not that valuable." Her stepsister's face instantly turned pale. The handkerchief in her hand made a tearing sound and broke into 2 pieces. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down. She was not married yet. Indeed, she should not fall out with her brother. But when she thought of the news she had just learned, she suddenly felt wronged. She bit her lower lip and said sadly, "Brother Shi, you should know that once you enter the palace, you are as deep as the sea. Most of the women in the world are pitiful. Why do you still want to poke at me? I know that father and brother Shi are my reliance in the royal family. But if I want to have a firm foothold, children and the prince's love are indispensable. If I can be the first to give birth to a royal grandson, won't brother Shi be honored too?" And then? Jiang Pengji listened patiently for a long time, but the other party was still dawdling and could not get to the point. This made Jiang Pengji very unhappy. However, the viewers in the streaming room reacted and reminded Jiang Pengji. "Kuzagio Chi fan, damn, I understand. Is she complaining about the bride that the streamer arranged for her?" When the bullet screen was posted, many viewers came back to their senses. They could not help but think of Hui Jun, who had a beauty that could captivate even the birds and beasts. If that was the case, they could understand. Any legal wife would feel uneasy if they had such a stunning woman in their dowry. Who knew if the groom's soul would be taken away by the bride on the wedding night, leaving the proper bride alone in the room? For women in ancient times, it was not an honorable thing to return the bride intact. As expected, the stepdaughter mentioned Hui Jun. "If brother Shi is really doing this for my own good, why did you arrange for that vixen called Hui Jun?" Jiang Pengji asked in return, "If you didn't prepare such a beautiful woman, would you have arranged for a woman with no face to be your dowry?" "Sister, I don't want to nag you, but you are only 12 years old. I know Wuma Jun well. He would rather not eat meat for 3 days than to go without a woman for 1 day. How can you fight for favor with such a man and establish yourself in the backyard?" Father specially selected Hui Jun and carefully prepared her. Before you reach the age of 15, she can totally win over Wuma Jun. When you really grow up, can Hui Jun still monopolize your husband's favor and not return it? Her stepsister's expression was like a broken palette. There were all kinds of colors. It was truly a riot of colors. Seeing this, Jiang Pengji added another stab. "Father wrote to you before and asked me to tell you that a woman's body is delicate. Childbirth is too damaging to the foundation. I am still young, so there is no hurry to pass on the heirs. It is not too late to consider it when you are 17 or 18. Her stepsister's face darkened when she heard this. She understood that there was no turning back for Hui Jun. What was more disgusting was that she could not be chased away or even treated harshly. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.